The views and opinions in this program are not those of CISA 7 or Spectrum.
Here.
Maloney?
Here.
McCoy?
Here.
Sitnikau?
Here.
Shelton?
Here.
Hoogle?
Coming.
Warren?
Here. Okay, we have 7 board members, or we'll have 7 board members here. Eric is stuck behind the train. At this point, I'd entertain a motion for the closed session.
I move that the board convene in closed session in room 337 pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.85, paren 1, paren C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, and pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.85, paren 1, paren F, considering financial, medical, and social or personal histories or disciplinary data of specific persons, preliminary considerations of specific personnel problems, or the investigation of charges against specific persons where paren B applies, which, if discussed in public, would likely to have a substantial adverse effect upon the reputation of any person referred to in such histories or data, or involved in such problems or investigations. To wit, staff investigations, administrative salary review, administrative hiring, and pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.85, paren 1, paren G, conferring with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation which is or is likely to become involved. To wit, disallowance of claim, the board may return to open session to vote on items discussed in closed session.
Is there a second?
Second.
Maloney?
Aye.
Warren? Van Sitnikau?
Aye.
Becker?
Aye.
McCoy?
Aye.
Shelton?
Aye.
Van Hoogle?
Aye.
7-0. Across the hall. So Eric is hosting. Motion to reconvene in open or actually, and this is part of our special board meeting, reconvene in open session. Katie?
I move that the board reconvene in open session pursuant to section 19.85, paren 2, Wisconsin statute to consider the balance of the special board meeting agenda.
All right, and before we actually, I'll wait till we get to teaching and learning to introduce everybody. So entertain the first motion.
I move that the resignations of staff as presented be approved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Sandy?
Did we do something second to reconvene into?
Oh,
No, I didn't think so.
we,
Okay. First we have to do.
sorry.
Vote to-
All right, was there a second on reconvening?
Second.
All right, Sandy?
McCoy?
Aye.
Shelton? Aye. Becker?
Aye.
Maloney?
Aye.
Sitnikau?
Aye.
Warren?
Aye.
Van Hoogle?
Aye.
Carried 7-0. Next, I'd entertain the first,
I will now I move that the resignations of staff as presented be approved.
and that was seconded by Eric.
It will be.
It was too. All right, go ahead.
Second.
All right, Sandy?
Becker,
Aye.
Sitnikau,
Aye.
Maloney,
Aye.
Vanden Heuvel,
Aye.
Shelton,
Aye.
Warren,
Aye.
McCoy.
Aye.
Carried 7-0.
I move that the employment of staff as presented be approved.
Second.
I just had one quick question on the riders. I don't know who I should ask the question of. Is Terry here? Oh, on the list of riders, there were some people that were crossed off. And I'm just wondering, it didn't seem like they were replaced. They were just crossed off. I'm just wondering why their names are there, why they're crossed off.
I would need to check into that.
Okay.
They probably declined the position after they already went to the board,
Oh, after they were put on.
a previous agenda.
Oh, okay.
Right,
Oh, all right. So we approved them, and now we're approving that they've been taken off the list.
Correct.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense.
Can you get some lights back there, please?
All right. Roll call, Sandy.
Warren,
Aye.
Becker,
Aye.
McCoy,
Aye.
Sitnikau,
Aye.
Maloney,
Aye.
Shelton. Aye. Vanden Heuvel,
Aye.
Carried 7-0.
I move the transfers of staff as presented be approved.
Second.
Sandy.
Shelton. Aye. Maloney,
Aye.
Warren,
Aye.
Vanden Heuvel,
Aye.
Sitnikau,
Aye.
McCoy,
Aye.
Becker.
Aye.
Carried 7-0. That concludes our special board meeting. I'd entertain a motion for adjournment of the special board meeting.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, then we'll move into our teaching and learning work session. And we took roll call, all seven, or earlier at 5 o'clock, all 7 board members are present. Also joined with us at the table are our intercity student council members, Luke Pisani, who's from Southwest High School, and Becca Delvo, who's from John Dewey Academy. So nice to see you again. And then also to my left is Dr. Michelle Langenfeld, our superintendent, and to my far left is Sandy Heller, our board secretary. A couple of things before we begin. I wanted to let the members of the public know that you can view the board agenda and handouts as well as minutes from past meetings by visiting the district website at www.gbaps.org. Click on Our District and then click on the left Board of Education. And on that left menu, you'll find a link to agendas and minutes. This link will take you to a website called Agenda Manager, where all board agendas, minutes, and handouts from board meetings are housed. Also, the board will provide our community tonight 2 opportunities to speak before the board. The first opportunity is during our open forum, which is coming up as soon as I finish talking. The second opportunity is during agenda items were indicated by public comment on our agenda. All speakers must fill out a form indicating their desire to speak. If you wish to speak during the open forum, you may do so with respect to either items that are posted on tonight's agenda or any other matter you wish to share with the board. Please know that Wisconsin's open meeting laws prohibits the board from conducting business on matters brought during this open forum. The board will also permit public comment during agenda items as noted on the board's agenda. During this public participation time, consistent with state and federal laws, board members may engage in dialogue with the speakers. In order that all voices are heard, the board will suspend engagement until all speakers have had a chance to speak. The process for speaking during the agenda item is as follows. The board will first hear the presentation excuse me, and discuss the agenda item before calling on those who desire to speak. If you'd like to speak during a specific agenda item, please fill out a form and give it to Sandy, our board secretary, at any point during the meeting. If you desire to speak and if you find yourself wanting to speak and you haven't yet filled out a form, just indicate that to the board secretary and you can fill out a form afterwards. Our board secretary will provide the names of those wishing to speak to the board member conducting that part of the meeting, and you will be called upon to speak at the appropriate time. In general, please keep your comments to 5 minutes. Prior to starting your comments, please provide your name and address. Okay. Okay. Okay, thanks. All right, we're going to call these up in the order received. First is Sarah and Mark Valentine, and I understand Kristina would like to speak.
Got me here? Is
Yes.
this the situation? It's on? Okay. I'm not speaking on my behalf, just so everyone knows. I was asked by Sarah and Mark Valentine to read this letter on their behalf because they were unable to make it tonight. Their address, Sandy, do you have it? 3026 Nicolay Drive, Green Bay, Wisconsin, 54311. To the GBAPS Board of Education, thank you for your time in consideration of the issue of the current dyslexia legislation and support for dyslexic students in our schools. Our daughter, Gwendolyn, a 4th grader at Red Smith, was diagnosed with dyslexia last year at the end of her second grade year. We are both educators, and even with our teacher training and years in the classroom, we felt completely unprepared to support our own daughter with this disability. We know that, like us, teachers and parents across the state need more resources for understanding and supporting dyslexia. Specifically at our school, we have been disappointed with the support that they are able to provide Gwendolyn, so we want to advocate for increased awareness and resources in the district to support students with reading learning disabilities. As the Assembly Bill 110 addresses, this should start with the education of parents and educators on the screening processes for dyslexia, proven interventions for dyslexic students, and available resources. Dyslexic readers and writers need more direct phonics instruction than our district's ELA curriculum are currently providing. We believe this should be looked at either for intervention with identified students or as a shift in curriculum that could benefit all students. In our experience at Red Smith, the school was able to provide support to our struggling reader through reading recovery and continued small group intervention in the early elementary years, 1st and 2nd grade, before she was diagnosed with dyslexia. But in 3rd grade, we were told that even though she was still significantly behind grade level and has dyslexia, she essentially is aged out of the reading support, as they only have the resources to focus on early elementary. We were left to feel like we needed to fend for ourselves, to find resources and to support to help our daughter learn to read as she was falling through the cracks of the system. We feel lucky to have found On the Mark Dyslexia Clinic, a local nonprofit promoting the literacy of dyslexic K-12 students through tutoring services. Gwendolyn has been receiving one-on-one tutoring with direct phonics instruction for 2 hours per week for the past summer, and we have seen great gains in her reading skills as well as in her confidence. This year, Mark was trained in the Wilson reading method through On the Mark and volunteers as a dyslexia tutor there as well. He was motivated to be trained to support our daughter, his own students, and to give back to the organization. We wish that the district would be able to provide similar service to dyslexic students during the school day, or partner with the organization to have after-school tutoring centers at schools around the district to make it accessible for our students. Building self-esteem and equipping our students with lifelong learning should be a top priority for all of our learners. We are both educators, and before our personal connection to dyslexia, we barely knew anything about it. So we know this gap isn't the fault of our district teachers. But we also know that we can do better in learning about and serving these kids. Thanks for taking a deeper look at the issue.
All right, next. Okay, next is Betty Kosick.
Hello. My name is Betty Kosick. I live at 2346 Browning Road, Green Bay. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of Green Bay Advocates for Public Education. I'm following up on Amanda Odenhoven's ask that was made last month. We all know that there are still schools in our district that qualify for CEP, and we know that because of this, we could be feeding more kids breakfast and lunch. We have a potential source of revenue through additional CEP designations. With that said, what is the reason we are not following through to make sure that all schools that qualify for CEP are participating in the program? On another point, I asked a couple months ago about administrators, and I was wondering if you would be able to please provide the public with your new adjusted table of organization. I understand that has flattened administration a little, but it would be great to see it on paper. Thank you.
Thanks, Betty. Next is Wanda Anton and Cheyenne Grinion.
Speak first with your address.
My name is Cheyenne Greeno. The address is N6491 Evergreen Drive, Oneida, Wisconsin, 54155.
My name's Wanda, 1224 Driftwood Drive, De Pere.
And I'm Elizabeth Sauer-Priest, and I'm 834 Nicolay Avenue, Green Bay.
Post home Maloney, New York. That means hello, everyone. My Indian name is Watsachian, and it means it sparkles on the water. My English name is Cheyenne Greeno. I'm a member of the Menominee Nation in Kristina, Wisconsin. I work for Title VI in the Indian Education Department for the Green Bay Public Schools. I would like to give thanks to the Menominee Nation for fighting for this land because this is their homelands. I would like to open by giving a huge Waiwanan, a thank you to my Native American ancestors who have fought and continue to fight colonization for our Native American indigenous people. Throughout historical trauma they've endured, we are here today because of their resiliency. One of our top priorities is to always look after our children and the next 7 generations. I will follow protocol and let my elder speak.
My name's Wanda Anton. I'm Dene, Inde, and Atam. It is my responsibility as an elder to speak up for students and families that I serve. Motivate and retain diverse, qualified workforce with a supportive work environment. Treat all employees with dignity and respect. Foster open communication and personal accountability. These are just a few of the statements, the mission statements of the Green Bay Human Resource Department. I have been with the school district for 4 years. This will be my 5th year. During this time, I have witnessed 10 amazing Title VI professionals leave our program. There's a systematic approach that exists in the Green Bay School District that needs to be investigated. It needs to be investigated by a consulting firm that understands our Native perspective, because we have a different view of the world. Protect your spirit, because you are in a place where spirits get eaten. That's my signature from a quote from John Trudell. John Trudell is speaking of the macro and the microaggressions that occur every single day to Native students and staff. I know a professor at Virginia Tech whose uncle authored a publication entitled Restorative Education, Reconciliation, and Healing. He speaks of atrocities, cultural misalignments, power imbalance, the world view versus a Native indigenous view. They are very different. A parent reminded me that the English language is based in power and individualistic values. I, me, my. I, me, my. Our language, our native perspective is based on consensus. Consensus is we, relationships, patterns, understanding who we are as a nation, respect. We submitted a model of consensus that we thought would be best practices because we know our Native kids, our Native families. One of the approaches to change, be fearlessly honest in our relationships in order to establish and build trust. That's not happening. We have followed the chain of command for this model and given it to the appropriate channels. It is our hope that we meet with a change, a person that can hear our voices and make changes, because it's it's more in depth than we can even talk about. Dr. Holly talked about that iceberg, and we're just hitting the tip of the iceberg. I want to be validated. I want us to be affirmed that we're doing work with the students and families in this district.
So I think I am actually the next speaker up.
Yes, you are. Go ahead.
As you guessed, we may need a little more than 5 minutes for all of this. But before I begin my statement, I wanted to bring up what's called the 4 Agreements. And they're from the book Courageous Conversations About Race, which is the basis of the Beyond Diversity training through the Disproportionality Network based out of Madison. So the book states, a candid conversation about race is not easy for educators. The 4 Agreements create conditions for safe exploration and profound learning for all. And it's a strategy to break down racial tensions and raising racism as a topic of discussion that allow those who possess knowledge on particular topics to have the opportunity to share it. And those 4 agreements are to stay engaged in the conversation and not fall into silence, which is something that we have experienced, to expect to feel discomfort when you're discussing issues that may be related to race, and the discomfort allows you to discover your own and others' perspectives, and to speak your truth. In my case, I will be speaking my own truth tonight. And to expect and accept a lack of closure, because race is a conversation that needs to be ongoing. So now I will give my statement. I myself am a product of the Green Bay schools. I graduated from Preble. As a student, I had to defend the fact that my grandparents lived on the Oneida Reservation. There was a day my classmates decided to spend the entire day teasing me about how my grandparents obviously had 7 or 8 rusted out cars, broken down, didn't run, in their front yard, and that if they lived on the reservation, they had to be poor. Neither fact was true, but it didn't matter. My teacher did nothing. I had the experience of having a teacher that I really respected announce in front of the class that I would now be speaking on what it was like to live in a teepee. I didn't have an answer for her, and she very angrily shouted at me that I wasn't a real Indian for that reason, because I couldn't speak about it. She never apologized, and this was done in front of the entire class, which then turned around and laughed at me. Nothing happened. In 4 years of high school, I had 5 Indian education advocates. One only lasted 4 months. These incidences are the primary ones that I remember to this day, but there were so many more. And that made up my experience as a Native student in Green Bay schools. Today, I'm a parent. I have 3 children this year that are in the Green Bay schools. One of them has come home in a previous year, in November, of course, to tell me that she had learned all about Indians from her teacher that day in class. And to some of my daughter's knowledge, Indians have black hair, worn in 2 braids, and they wear deerskin. So far, my kids have been lucky enough not to experience anything beyond what I have, or anything similar to what I have, any of the historical trauma trigger incidences that are so prevalent. But because of my children, I made it my goal as a parent and as an educator, because that's what I am, to make sure that they and no other Native student ever had to experience that. Now, I worked for 7 years at Southwest High School with the Oneida Yes program. So I was working specifically with Native students, although not as a district staff. The school considered me a regular member of staff. I know for a fact that there are incidences of racism, prejudice, microaggressions, whether explicit and intentional or unintentional, that are still occurring in Green Bay schools today. This evidence, combined with my personal experiences, are what drive me to continue working against inequity and prejudice in education. I deliberately made career choices, such as working for Title VI, and furthered my education because I feel so strongly about this. In fact, my doctoral dissertation was on educator perceptions of Native students in public school districts. My personal goal has always been to improve multicultural education and professional development for educators at all school districts, not just Green Bay. More specifically, I want to improve the implementation of Act 31, essentially. These goals and concerns are what led me to take the position with the Title VI program here. Even though I was already aware of internal strife within the program, which eventually led to appearance by the Parent Advisory Committee at a school board meeting in June 2018, I had reservations about taking the position, but mostly I had hoped that with new leadership, the dissension and conflict would be addressed and the Title VI staff would come together as a complete team, instead of continuing to be divided into divisions of Native staff and non-Native staff. But that did not happen. After 5 months on the job, I began to acutely feel the divide and feel myself drawn into the battle, even though I was trying not to. I personally did not want to add to the problem, so I reached out to the Native staff to set a meeting date. I did not include the non-Native staff because I felt that the Native staff were experiencing things individually, and I wanted us to get together and talk to see if our experiences were similar. We met to discuss those experiences and concerns with the Title VI program. Working in consensus, we created a written blueprint for the future of Title VI, which we then passed on to Title VI leadership. The blueprint identified areas that we, as Native people and district staff, felt were important and necessary for the future success of our Native students. Those areas were defining Native culture, creating greater awareness of the Title VI program, developing an approach to change within the Title VI program to address those issues, identifying what needs to be done to bring about positive change, and how we should move forward in the future as the Title VI program. We, the Native staff, then met with leadership about the blueprint. Working with leadership, we created a plan for the 2019-2020 school year, this school year, to be implemented once buy-in was received from all Title VI staff, Native and non-Native. Our goal was to address the parts of the Title VI program that are broken and ineffectual, namely the division between Native and non-Native staff, the misinformation about Native culture given out as factual to teachers, and the willful ignorance of the Title VI leadership regarding the past history and experiences of the Title VI program, and how those, combined with our Native culture, impacts how the staff as Native people and our Native students and families impacts our view of how the Title VI program is broken. It needs to work better. The Title VI staff has brought these, Title VI Native staff specifically, has brought these concerns to district administration. The Title VI leadership has always provided an excuse as to why those concerns are invalid. This tense work environment is what led to my resignation from the Title VI program on August 26th. If the Green Bay School District Native staff is being devalued, invalidated, and ignored, our Native students are feeling that too. They absolutely are. And as a parent of 3 Native students in the Green Bay School District, I will not have my children experience here what I did. Please fix the Title VI Indian Education Program for the future success of all of our Native students. Thank you.
Thank you.
I was given a letter from an elder from 1995, and her 2 children experienced the same thing, and I don't know who to submit it to.
Is it to Sandy?
And then there's lots of articles. One of the ones that I pulled up was the discomfort of white adults should never take priority over the success of our Black and brown students. This is real to us.
Thank you. Next is Janet Peaches.
I am Janet Peaches. I reside at 2745 East River Drive, Green Bay, Wisconsin. I'm here to speak about dyslexia. I'm here because of my son and myself. I was diagnosed back in 91, and I was in college at the time. I finished my associate's degree at that time with no accommodations. I am currently back in college at UWGB with lots of accommodations, thank God. I am a student because of accommodations being brought forward to people with diagnoses. My son is not diagnosed at this time because of the cost. It's about $1,000 out of pocket to have him diagnosed. Insurance does not cover it. He would have to go to Children's and down in Milwaukee to be diagnosed at this point. He's a 6th grader currently at Washington Middle School this year. We're brand new back to the district. This touches my heart because he can't get the same types of accommodations that I get. I get everything from oral reading, so all of my books are actually audioed to me. I'm going to be getting Dragon Speak, so I can actually dictate all of my papers. I am going to be getting dyslexic font, so it's easier for me just to read from my phone even. These are things that are invisible maybe to all of you because I stand here and I don't look disabled. I don't look like that's what I would need. My son doesn't look like it either. He looks like a typical 11-year-old. And we're very lucky that he got into Washington Middle School for the arts. And that principal, when I sat down with her and spoke to her about my son's dyslexia, but remember, he is not medically diagnosed because that's what I consistently get asked by teachers. Does he have a 504? Is he IEP'd? No, he's not. But why doesn't he get the same accommodations that I have? They say no children left behind. Is that real? That's what I ask. Please help. It is a real need. I speak to parents every day on Facebook that have the same challenges that I have with my son. I'm in the face of the students and the parents and the teachers on a regular basis. I have to beg for the accommodations that I get at school currently. They actually just had to come up with a brand new accommodation because I was getting papers sent to me by professors in a PDF form. A PDF form means it's a picture. The reader that I have at home cannot read that to me because it looks like a picture to it. So I'm behind in readings already into a week because my reader can't read it. So I'm fighting with my own dyslexia to be able to read what I need for those classes. Some of the accommodations that I am getting is because of DVR, Department of Vocational Rehabilitation. I am getting money towards school also, which is wonderful. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to afford to go back. I hope that someday my son can get those same things from them. But there are things that are available for school districts, because the school district we just came from had a system called Barton. It is also an Orton-Gillingham system, if you're familiar with that. These systems teach children that are dyslexic and children that are not dyslexics how to read in a phonic way. We, like the letter that was read earlier, did a full year of private tutoring. And it was like $45 an hour, and we did 3 hours a week. He excelled at it. He did so well. He's now at a point where he's reading at a 5th grade level, and he's in 6th grade. He has confidence like he's never had before. I've told people that before he was taking the Barton system, he was getting 1s and 2s correct on spelling tests back in 1st grade. A week with Barton, he went to 100s. So it works. I just feel like there's teachers that want to help and they don't know how because they don't have the system sitting in front of them. It's not even taught in the universities on how to teach these children. It's not talked about. It's for people that do special education. We're no more special than you are. We just need a different type of accommodation. I need an accommodation just like a blind person would. I just believe that it should be available. We have strengths, and a lot of them. My son got into the School of Arts because of those strengths. He's incredibly artistic and loves theater. He tells me he's going to work for Disney. I hope. Pray. But yeah, I just feel like you as a board can really make this happen. And I know it's in the legislation right now, and there's other states that have made this happen. And I would just really love to see it where I don't have to be in the classroom and saying, no, he doesn't have a diagnosis. But why does it matter? Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. Amy Bahena Etner.
Good evening. My name is Amy Bahena Etner. I reside at 4810 Stella Court, number 25, Oneida, Wisconsin. And I'm here tonight to talk about dyslexia. Many of you know me professionally as I am an employee of the district, currently serving as a library media specialist, but I was a 1st grade teacher for many, many years. And tonight I'm coming to you more as a mother of a child with dyslexia, one who was not diagnosed until we took him to a private clinic on the Mark just prior to the start of his 4th grade year. My son struggled in kindergarten with literacy. We come from a very literate household. And one would think that with my teacher training, just as the letter Ms. Shelton read, would be able to handle or remediate or know how to fix whatever holes in his reading existed. But we didn't. I didn't. I have those skills. I was never trained in college properly how to implement systemic structured phonics, and it was not in the curriculum as a 1st grade teacher. So we got to kindergarten, and I said, he's flipping a lot of his letters, and some of the things he's reading just aren't making sense, and I don't know how to cue him to get it to make sense for him, to get him to be a reader and to be able to be a writer. And they said, give it time. Give it time. That was the teacher's answer. Give it time. We are also an English language household as we speak Spanish in home. And they said, that can just be part of the confusion. Let me tell you, it wasn't part of the confusion. 2nd grade, he's still not the lowest 20%, so we can't bring him through the response to intervention process, and we can't bring him to that MLSS system and get him reading recovery or any of the other things that a child with reading difficulties might qualify for. So here's Mama doing the work at home the best she knows how. 3rd grade came. He's hiding under tables and flipping them in the classroom. His behavior and frustration level got to the point where his behavior became an immense distraction, not only to his own learning, but to everyone else in the classroom. He eventually qualified for an IEP in the area of emotional and behaviorally disturbed, when we should have just identified the reading disability that he had from the start in kindergarten when his mom asked about it. His mom, who knows him better than any, who is a trained educator and knew. We need to trust the parents who are bringing these discrepancies to educators' attention. We need to trust the educators in the classroom who know that that's not right but don't know how to help. We need to refine our process for getting students help. It's not acceptable to say that just because they're not the 20% lowest, that they don't need additional supports. That's not okay. Until it got to the point where he gets an EBD referral for behavior, and then he qualifies for extra supports. We have since moved out of the district, and we have found incredible support. They have increased his occupational therapy time to help with the writing, and they are working with the dyslexia clinic, private dyslexia clinic that we are taking him to accommodate his spelling lists, which was something that Green Bay was not willing to do. I am feeling frustration, and I'm voicing it on behalf of my son and every other child that's sitting in a classroom that isn't getting the support they need for a recognized learning disability. But for some reason, the D word doesn't exist. And I don't know why. We need to be willing to say it. We need to be willing to name it. We need to be willing to screen children and appropriately get them services for the deficits that they have so that they can shine in all of the strengths that they do. My child's entire educational career could have been very different if we had acted early and with support from the regular curriculum. I guess I'm here asking you to support the dyslexia legislation and to see what we can do to implement that throughout our district, because 1 in 5 children, potentially in every classroom, out of a classroom of 25, that's 5 kids, are struggling with the same thing my son went through. And I cannot bear to think that that's an acceptable risk for these kids' futures. We need to do something more. We need to provide more services and more education for our staff and families. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a clarifying question regarding what you had mentioned, something about 20%, there's a boundary that they can't cross over. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? Because I'm not familiar with what that is.
When we asked about it, about him getting extra support, such as reading recovery in first grade or extra reading support with a reading interventionist, we were told that he didn't fall on testing within the lowest 20% of the grade, so other children were needier, and therefore he didn't qualify for services. We were also told that, well, because he gets services through the English language department, that was reading support and service, so it would be redundant, kind of double dipping. So I'm not sure if it's a staffing issue or, you know what I mean, to be able to handle the amount of need in a particular building, if they have to limit how many children they take, or what the exact issue is. But that's what we were told.
And we're in the 20% number, were you told where that came from?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Amy. Next is Elaine Karch.
Hi, I'm Elaine Karch. I am speaking on behalf of my little grandson, and I'm not used to public speaking, so bear with me. My address is 836 Wimber Way, Pulaski. Okay.
Make sure she's in the microphone.
All right, dear board.
Excuse me, would you speak into the microphone?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Okay. Dear board, as a grandmother, I represent a child who was educated in this district. I come speaking specifically in regards to the Assembly Bill 110 pertaining to the act of the statewide required dyslexia guidebook. In the interest of material and time, I will outline the purpose of the guidebook, the reason that the guidebook is developed, and draw a quick parallel to the rest of the constituency of the nation, as at least 48 states already have drawn legislation before Wisconsin in protection of the dyslexia student. First, this guidebook is not asking for very much. To most people, it is inherently obvious that dyslexic students, their teachers, and their caretakers would need some leadership in the identification, intervention, and educational planning of the specific needs of the dyslexic child. Most people easily understand that that the dyslexic students have atypical development that is specifically founded at peer review and accredited research groups such as Yale, Harvard, and locally the University of Wisconsin-Madison and Eau Claire. In literature, it has been said that no other learning disorder is so widely published and yet so poorly recognized in practice. From experience in this district, my family has found this to be detrimentally true. A topical background on my grandson's history is that he was routinely showing traits of dyslexia from kindergarten. He did not learn his 4K sight words. He transposed letters. He generally wrote short and concise responses. He was a disfluent speaker whose peers often spoke over him during his irregular gaps while he was searching for words. He would round and around and round, and he couldn't get the answers, so the teachers were starting to find the answers for him, which was not good. He read slowly. He chewed the skin on his fingers. He dodged from being asked to read, cried about going to school, cried about after school, called himself stupid, had to go to private therapy to work on anxiety during the school year. He tested in the 5 percentile in reading on the STAR test, similarly in the state tests. He learned more in other subjects in school. He verbally could exchange more information than he could write, and he memorized just about everything quickly and without ever forgetting. But he absolutely never improved on his rate of progress in language. These are all classic hallmarks for a learning disability. His mother was a great parent at conferences for the first 4 years that he was in this school district. She did what the parents asked. They waited for him to catch up. And they kept saying that, he'll catch up, he'll catch up. In looking back, it is pretty clear that the educators didn't have a better plan. One day, in the beginning of 3rd grade, his mother was volunteering at Language Arts. She noticed that the kids were in their final copy with 3 pages of typed text. It was a 6-week project, and they were at the end. My daughter saw my grandson's computer worksheet with about 4 sentences, misspelled to the point that autocorrect couldn't even make a suggestion. The dyslexic child masterfully put the keyboard on top of his hands and wiggled his fingers underneath as though pretending to type, difficult to notice by a teacher. He was looking at his screen, but nothing was being written. He was waiting to finish failing the project because he just couldn't do the project. His mother, after that class, asked the teacher, why is he in the 4th sentence when everybody else is on their 3rd? Why does he hide his hands under the keyboard and to make it look like he's typing? But clearly he doesn't. Why are words like you, are, and when so misspelled that even autocorrect cannot help him? Why has he been working so hard for so little? These are all the classical criteria for a learning disability, such as dyslexia. But his teacher responded to the contrary, and I quote, well, he's not got a learning disability, if that's what you mean. He can remember anything we ask. He's good at sports, and he's got a lot of friends. It's probably a visual thing. It was not a visual thing. His kindergarten teacher noted that he was prolifically transposing letters, was not showing an ability to learn sight words. He did not refer the family to look at dyslexia. His 1st and 2nd grade teacher was also the reading specialist at the school. She did not refer him to SLD assessment. His 3rd grade teacher told the family that he did not know much about learning disabilities, but from what he saw, he was not a learning problem. It was a visual thing. My daughter tried to bring the parent referral process for her concerns in the beginning of the 3rd grade. The district deferred multiple times on the evaluation process, and the determination did not come until the 4th grade ended, the whole year later. During the 4th grade year, my grandson was identified with dyslexia by an outside psychologist who classified his dyslexia as severe. When his diagnosis was presented at the SLD IEP determination meeting, the district psychologist on the team dismissed the report on the basis that this was done 9 days before the end of our data collection. We will not accept it. 9 days. Well, dyslexia is primarily a left hemisphere neuroatypical anomaly of the temporal peripheral brain areas of the brain, the parietal areas of the brain. The dyslexic brain enters the world from parents who can carry the dyslexic inheritance pattern genetically, and it stays in the brain despite any degree of response to intervention applied until the brain dies. A dyslexic is a dyslexic, as an autistic is an autistic. It took a long time for these parents to understand that they were looking at dyslexia. It took a longer time to realize that the school was not going to help procure services to help their child with dyslexia. It took 2 years from the start of the parent request to get his ADA protection for his disability under IDEA. That took too long. That's just too long. But it does not have to be this way. Parents around the state noticed that the federal government made laws on education based on arbitrary factors, not specific findings. In the process of outlining these IDEA, ESSA laws in the last 2 decades, dyslexia was omitted. However, dyslexia is the leading most common form of learning disability. This was an error of education on behalf of the lobbying at the federal level. It is known in cognitive scientific circles that the RTI process is generally ineffective in any substantial fashion to long-term needs of the phonologically struggling child with dyslexia. This is because the RTI process is designed primarily to close the gap of kids who fall behind. Presumably, typical developing kids won't need RTI again, or if they do, they can bounce behind and ahead again. Until the typical developing child in RTI, the dyslexic child has a brain that is permanently wired to misconstrue language information. If they show progress in RTI, they probably will not remain proficient. The process of RTI is not always geared to dyslexia, and it allows for gaps in time, which pulls them further behind. Furthermore, the myopic criteria of SLD is so severe that even severely dyslexic children do not qualify for their own nearest category of IDEA law. Wisconsin is nearly dead last in the list of states who already have enacted laws for dyslexic children in school. Assembly Bill 110 is not asking for very much, and it will apply to Green Bay. They are asking for a handbook to be posted on the school website and the state's website. The handbook is very simple. It is a link for parents to find the signs of dyslexia in their children, and it offers some suggestions for interventions that are proven by science. It does not state that the schools must do these scientifically proven methods or otherwise. It is a way of the parents to receive education on dyslexia when they are struggling to find it fit in the ESSA process for the seemingly dyslexic child. It is lonely logic and shared information. Districts in the state, such as Madison, Milwaukee, Waunakee, Eau Claire, have been enacting their own process of interventions for dyslexia, above and beyond the minimum requirement of the special education RTI laws. Milwaukee and Madison have been using American Reader Corp in their schools for at least a decade. Wanakee instituted a process for intervention. Oh, I screwed up on that. When a child falls behind the 50th percentile, that's what Wanakee does, as opposed to the minimums that require practice at the 25th percentile. These districts did this with success because they were proactive in recognizing that IDEA process was not covering the needs of children who were struggling with dyslexia for language and dyscalculia, I don't know, of math, that's it. Thank you. There are some general numbers assumed on the topic of dyslexia that make this absolutely not a nothing burger topic. Parents with dyslexia will likely have children with dyslexia at a rate of 5% of the student body. 5% represents the same population number as autism. If a dyslexic child is not identified and receiving specifically proven phonologically based intervention by 3rd grade, they are unlikely to close their gap. By 4th grade, a dyslexic without specifically sound intervention will work 4 times harder to keep up with the current rate of progress, and this is not reasonably possible. Dyslexia shows significant behavioral problems and truancy in the middle school. Dyslexias are in the highest probability to drop out of high school. Dyslexia are amongst the least likely groups to receive education protection under ADA or educational laws. Despite that, they can get legally qualified help for both a 504 and an IEP. Dyslexias tend to have at least normal intelligence, often are high intelligence, which means such dyslexics are filling many of the prisons because they're they struggle so much. There are a lot of smart kids underserved in school. Most of the underserved are likely to be dyslexic. There are these simple things to do. It is scientifically valid to identify a dyslexic in kindergarten. Decades-long scientifically based programs exist that better match the phonological needs of the dyslexic child than teachers are using in school. Teachers are coming out of college unaware of how to identify or teach the dyslexic child. Schools are not necessarily sending them for training or having them work directly with reading math disordered children, such as dyslexics. This training is available. Many schools are not creating dyslexic programs within each school building, such as technology labs designed for dyslexic accommodations or classrooms where formative phonology can be taught in lieu of curriculum that may be inappropriate for the dyslexic, like replace a literature class with a phonology class. So if you were listening, there was much length to this statement regarding the errors ensued, but by evading the needs of the dyslexic child. However, the corrections to meet the needs of a dyslexic child are very short and simple. And I just want to finish by saying my daughter, my grandson's parents, my daughter and her husband, met with the school board members many times, and they, with no avail. So what they actually ended up doing is moving out. They are now living in Minnesota, getting the help and the help that they're going to get for him. He is taken out, he's a 6th grader. He's taken out of literature for phonology, and he is taken out of, they have a thing in 6th grade about state history. He's actually leaving that too. And they're working with a specific dyslexia class, so he gets both. And they do have a private tutor as well. And they had that last year too. But he's getting the help he needs. We're not really seeing some progress, but like the statement, this stuff needs to be checked early. We all know how, you guys know how the brains work. You're teachers, you're intelligent people. You know that if we catch this early, it can be prevented. And like I said, he's not here anymore. They had to leave. But I plead for the rest of these kids. You're in control of their futures. I mean, we don't know what his future is going to be. We don't know if he will have a future because he's waited too long. But please do this for your kids. Thank you.
Would you mind leaving that statement? If you'd stop noodling it up, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, is there anyone else who would like to speak during this open forum time? I know there's other speakers that want to speak directly to agenda topics, so we'll call your name during those times. All right, seeing none, we'll move to our teaching and learning work session, and that'll be facilitated by Katie Maloney.
Thank you, Brenda. We have teaching and learning discussion item, dyslexia legislation, Assembly Bill 110, and district literacy practices, which will be followed by public comment. So, joined at the table by John Magus.
As Associate Superintendent John Magus comes to the table, this has been an ongoing discussion in a body of work, and I really appreciate all the families that came forward tonight to share their stories, because it has been a really critical conversation in teaching and learning, and many steps have been taken, but there's obviously more work to do. So John, I'm going to turn it over to you so you can talk about the district literacy practices and where we are today.
Sure, and this was meant as a brief update. Had I known the context of having so many people coming forward with such just touching stories about the extreme struggles that have come forth, I would have prepared more than I have today. This was meant as a brief update on what we've done in the district related to our literacy practices universally, and then what have we done related to intervention. But I would say that my heart goes out, and I have extreme compassion for the individuals that shared their individual situations. There are truths to the case that we have not done enough yet. There's a lot that we've been working on. There are a lot of things that we have in place related to our universal practices, as well as what we're doing for phonological awareness at the early grade levels. But it is true, we do not have the resources that we would need to serve every student related to literacy intervention. We have a 0.5 literacy intervention in each of our schools, but if 5% of our students, as was stated, were struggling with dyslexia, when we also look at the need for what that intervention looks like, it is something that would have to be done in conjunction with special education as well, because it's a neurological diagnosis. So when we look at, what I'm saying is we're doing many things, we've done many things, and we have things yet to do. Yet, given the nature of the circumstances, it certainly doesn't feel that there's enough done yet. And so, what we're doing that we've been focusing on lately is our universal curriculum, that we have an adopted K-5 literacy resource that follows a scope and sequence, and that we're providing fidelity to instruction related to that resource, as well as making sure that we're screening every student. We also have focused on letters training for our 4K teachers as well, and we'll be focusing on our kindergarten teachers as well, and that's an intensive phonemic awareness training. And we also have administration that have been trained in becoming trainer of trainers for that program. So we have really focused on trying to make sure that gateway into the education system, that we're carefully watching that gate to make sure that every kid that comes through, that we're identifying and we're focusing on making sure that phonemic awareness is part of their instruction. When we're talking about kids that are further along in the system, however, students in middle school and beyond, we do have intervention in place, but there's certainly more that we could be doing. And there's a handout that we shared with the board outlining our interventions that we have in place. For beginning readers through the end of second grade, we have the Sunday system that we were listening to, and that's based on Orton Gillingham. And we also have a Sunday system too for intermediate readers that are in grades 3 through 8. And again, that's an Orton Gillingham piece as well. So we have a variety of interventions in place. We have a variety of assessments that we use to look at how the students are doing that are placed within that intervention. But there's obviously more that we have planned. I would say that in general, when we compare Green Bay compared to other districts related to how we're addressing literacy, and in particular how we're addressing phonemic awareness, I would say that we're further ahead than many districts. I think that we have a lot of struggle yet to overcome. And one thing that we have discussed is having an advisory committee that would work together, listening to the voices of the parents, similar to things that we have just heard, to make sure that we're really truly assessing our whole literacy system. That would not just be for students who have challenges with dyslexia, but it would be looking at our literacy programming as a whole, because we want to make sure that we're looking at what does our literacy look like within the universal, what does it look like within our EL instruction, and how are we serving our students in ELA within our special education courses. So again, this was meant as a very brief synopsis of where we are in preparation for the Assembly bill. I believe that we're well prepared for what the bill will ask. I think we're ahead of the curve as far as what the bill will ask. But the moral imperative to make sure that we're doing everything possible to serve every student is something that drives us very deeply and something that we take very seriously, and we won't stop until we're able to address the needs of every student.
Katie, are there questions, comments? Michelle?
I know, John, that we've had staff attend a conference that really focused in on dyslexia. I think that the piece, from that takeaway, how do you see that moving forward? And how can you give us a little more background in this literacy team that you're looking to convene, and how you would go about bringing people to that team as well?
Sure. So we did attend the National Dyslexia Conference, and we've also attended additional training through Teachers College related to dyslexia. I've attended various sessions as well, but the work, basically the trainer of trainers models that we have related to the letters training is something that we're looking at building our own expertise. We have a number of administrators here in district and a number of interventionists who are highly trained as trainers of trainers. So we want that instructional model to make sure that we're spreading it as much as possible. But when we look at the thought about an advisory committee, and this is something that we've talked about before, but we want it to be a combination of leadership, but also making sure that we're having all voices at the table, that it's representative of teachers and parents and others who have concerns. It's very similar to the advisory committees that we have for gifted and talented, or the newly forming bilingual advisory committee that we have. It's important that we're listening to these voices and that we have transparency and active seeking out of voices that have not been heard. And I think that we could also reach out to several of the parents that we have here. We want to make sure that membership is diverse and representative, but we would like to give opportunity to listen to individuals here as well for that purpose. So I would look for us to begin convening that in the coming weeks. Again, this is something that is newly developing, so we can give an update for the board in the near future, either through the weekly update or come back before the board again with additional details.
Kristina.
Thanks, John. I have two questions for you. The first, I'll give them both to you and you can just answer them. In terms of this bill, how do you see this being a framework for your work moving forward? And then the second is, you heard from the speakers this evening talk about teachers, whether talking personally or with their children's teachers not being prepared to work through the issues of dyslexia and in supporting their students. So what can a district of our size do to work with our colleges and universities in those teacher education programs? Because I think that's a role that we can play to ensure that they're getting the education that they need.
Sure, and if I'm going to tell a little bit of a personal story. I became an administrator partly because I was working as a high school teacher, and I saw many students passing through my classroom headed towards graduation who quite, in all respects, were functionally illiterate. And so literacy, knowing that that is the critical gateway for success for all individuals to be able to be high performing in society and be able to have livable wage and all those factors as far as access and involvement in political systems and being engaged in community, literacy is such a critical backbone to what we do. It should be our driving force behind our decision making. So as a moral imperative, literacy is critical to the way that we shape our work. And when we look at this work done through our continuous improvement model, we look at literacy as the primary piece, followed by mathematics and behavior. So focus on literacy and how we're improving literacy throughout the schools is really quite critical. When I look at the Assembly bill, I think the Assembly bill, as we've watched it developed, there was indication that it might be more prescriptive. It's turned out to be a little bit more of a, to a degree, a middle of the road piece as far as awareness and making sure that that the school district is aware and helping parents be more aware and teachers be more aware of dyslexia, and also that they're taking measures to address it. I don't feel, and I don't believe the board feels, and I know that our team does not feel that that's sufficient. We want to make sure that we're addressing it deeply within the way that we educate our students, and that really, as you mentioned, teacher preparation is a factor. And so when we're working with the higher ed partners, when we're working with higher ed, the thing that I also know is that teacher preparation does not go deeply into the science of teaching reading. And so learning the complexities of what is actually involved in teaching students how to read, whether it's an elementary teacher or whether it's looking at a secondary teacher who's doing content area literacy, there's not enough depth there. So for the time being, while we're helping the system raise their level of preparation for our teachers, that falls on us to make sure that we're giving the preparation and that we're involving our teachers through that training. And I believe that Nancy Chartier, Dr. Chartier, has deep knowledge and deep training related to a wide variety of reading programming and a wide variety of focus on intervention. So I think that she is an excellent resource to lead that, along with Linda Tetsky and others that we have focused in our teaching and learning department. But as we can see, it's not a finished task. I could go through the list that I shared with the board of everything we've done, and I think that it actually is impressive work. But given the context of what the need still is, it seems that would be not fair to the situation, because I think that if there's still a student that struggles, it's important for us to find a way of helping that individual student. Sure.
Rhonda. Okay, so you stated that you believe that the AB 110, Assembly Bill 110, is not prescriptive, it's more about awareness. We have had parents come forward tonight, and there have been others as well who they need prescriptive, right? They're looking for that. And so let's say this bill goes through, because I think it's important to note where the bill is. I believe it went through the Assembly, it was passed. Now it's in the Senate, right? Mm-mm. Or there was a hearing.
They had the Senate Education Committee heard it. The Education Committee has not voted.
Okay.
And it has not yet gone to the full Senate.
So, but it went through the Assembly.
It was voted, yes.
Okay.
It was approved by the passed through
Okay.
Assembly.
So, so I think of this in two ways. We know, and I try to work with things that I know. We know that we have families who are struggling. We know that we have students who are struggling. We know that what's in place isn't enough for them because for all the reasons that were discussed this evening in the public forum. I have concerns, honestly, I had less concerns before I came here and heard that it's not prescriptive, because when I hear something that's not prescriptive, that means that's not necessarily There won't necessarily be something to to address that specific problem, the one that we heard so much about. So I'm concerned about that. I'm also concerned about if it doesn't go through, because then I guess what I'm wondering about is, why does it take an assembly bill to go through for us to address the issues? And I guess what I'm really asking, and what my question revolves around, is whether it goes through or not, other than what you stated about literacy in general, what are we literally willing to do to address dyslexia in the Green Bay School District?
Can I? And actually, a lot of this work that we've done we've been working on, the district has put in place before the assembly bill came through. And I would look at the assembly bill, it's a national challenge, meeting the needs of students with dyslexia for many, many different reasons that I won't go into detail tonight, but I could. And so this bill really is considered the first step as a state to trying to make some changes related to dyslexia. We are behind. There's many, many states that have taken these steps before us. But even the states that have taken these steps are still struggling with the same kinds of things. So the legislation is not this magical thing where all of a sudden the states are perfectly addressing the needs of all readers. And so as a board member, the bill to me should not affect what we do, because we need to go faster than the bill is directing the state to do. And I think I served on the legislative council that formulated actually 2 bills. The second bill won't see the light of day. But the first bill is the guidebook bill. And there will be other legislation that comes forward from this work. And so it's really just the beginning. But if we only do what the guidebook says, then we're not moving fast enough. But there are districts that have done nothing, unlike our district. And so this guidebook, so this guidebook really is a push for the state to start paying attention to dyslexia, talking about dyslexia, learning about dyslexia, helping our universities understand what they need to teach teachers, and helping districts understand what they need to put in place to help students with dyslexia. So anyway, I just put that in perspective, that we can do whatever we want with dyslexia. We don't have to wait for a bill to tell us what to do. So let's move forward and do what we need to do, and be ahead of the curve instead of waiting for the legislature to tell us what to do.
Okay, Rhonda.
Thank you. So it was mentioned as well that, in fact, there are other districts working without the bill, that they are actually working on programs, or with programs, especially I think it was mentioned in AmeriCorps. Milwaukee, Madison is doing it. It was mentioned, the district wasn't mentioned, but there was a person that mentioned a district that they came from that's working out that. So we do know that there are districts out there working with specifically, not just literacy, but specifically to dyslexia. So when will we know because this is what will happen, okay? We'll go home tonight. I'll have parents who want to know what our plan is about dyslexia. At this point, not really sure what that sounds like. So I need to know in some form in the future as a board member, and I'm speaking for myself, I would love to be able to have a conversation that is, they can consume it, they feel they've been honored, they've been considered, and they're able to feel confident that we're not waiting for a bill to pass, but we actually are. We have real plans in place for specifically dyslexia, not just literacy. So that's what I would hope to see.
So if I can comment on that, we've moved far beyond where the board, what the bill is recommending. So we're not waiting for the bill. We haven't waited for the bill. The bill is an awareness piece for the rest of the state and others who aren't there yet. But we have done specific deep training around phonemic awareness, particularly for our 4K teachers, and we'll be moving into kindergarten for next year. So there's the deeper focus on phonemic awareness there. There's also the handout that I gave that lists each of our intervention pieces that we have at the different grade levels. So we have intervention for our students. Again, when we look at the amount of need compared to the amount of resource, it doesn't match. There's more need for literacy intervention than we currently have within our resources. But we do have a monitoring system. We do have interventions in place. We do have assessment of those interventions. That's further along than what the state is asking for. But I'm in complete agreement that it's not enough yet, that there's more that we want to do and need to do to make sure all of our students are served.
So, and I heard you say, John, that you want to put together a team that's to look at this specifically related to dyslexia, including asking people that spoke today or other people that might be interested in being part of that.
I think it needs to be both specific. I have some specific focus on dyslexia, but I think our literacy needs as a whole don't just fall into the camp of dyslexia, and we need to have a broad view of our literacy practices to make sure that the needs of our students with dyslexia are served well, the needs of our universal students are served well, the needs of our English language learners are served well, the needs of our literacy needs of our students in bilingual are served well, the needs of our students in special education are served well. We have a lot of work that has been done, and I'd be glad to share. We could prepare hours and hours of presentation on what we're doing related to literacy, and we have had board progress monitoring in the past that's gone deeply into that, and I'd be glad to share some of our past presentations if it would be helpful for questions related to those practices, or come forward again with additional information. What we're saying is we're further along than what the bill is asking for, quite a bit further along than that, but we don't want to rest until we've really re-examined and gone deep again with a broader committee, a broader look at what those needs are.
Andrew, then Eric.
So, first of all, to those that spoke and those in similar situations, I want to say as someone who served on the board almost 20 years, not continuously, but around 20 years, that I'm sorry. I was wrong. I asked probably in my first few years on the board some questions about this. And I think I was given the answers that I was given long before anyone who sits at these tables worked here. When I said, what is the district doing, as phonics and whole language became this debate that it shouldn't have been, and I was told then, and I was told later, and I was told probably more recently too, that we had balanced literacy. And what I didn't realize is that balanced literacy is a term whereby any small amount of, correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm not saying this is how we do it here, but basically whole language first, but any amount of phonics we put in, we're going to call it balanced, and that's what's marketed, not to Green Bay, but that's what's being taught in colleges. Some maybe a little bit, maybe in some more some of the better ones more than a little bit, but in some cases possibly token amounts of phonics. And there was a piece where a college professor in a different state said that she was philosophically opposed to phonics instruction. That actually came out of a professor's mouth. So again, that was a different state. I guess I didn't realize that this had become so political and so horrible of a thing, with consequences to real people lost in the shuffle here. I take the slightest bit of comfort in knowing that we're less behind the times than other districts, and maybe best among other districts, and I'm glad to hear that we are. But what I need to know, and I'm not asking this as a question tonight because you wouldn't have the answer to it tonight, and it would be based on anecdotes. But here's what I need to know as a board member in the near future to be okay with where we're at. I'm glad on the universal side we're doing more with phonics, and we're trying to make it actually balanced instead of just that being a word that's thrown in there. What I will need to know is that when a teacher or when parents suspect that a kid is struggling with dyslexia, that they can get a fair evaluation for whether or not they need intensive services, focused on the needs of the kids and not on the formality or the technicality of whether legally every aspect is met. I'm more interested in the kid getting the services, and that includes if that yes, that might mean in some cases money that we don't get the same reimbursement for, but let's be real, we don't get the very good we don't get the promised federal reimbursement for special ed anyways, and we never have. So that's where I'm coming from. Again, what we heard one individual story about some things that happened when psychologists were debating with psychologists and overruling. I want the kid to get services based on need, even if by some technicality something isn't a disability, because dyslexia is real, and it's very unfortunate that some political maneuvering has made it not count in some circles. I'm glad that we are ahead of the curve in what we're doing here. But I too have heard, the other thing I would say is I've heard, when I've had people bring stories to me, I've intervened on individual basis, and I've talked to administrators, I've had private conversations about what families have come to me about, and I think in many cases there have been some good results, but we also had people here who have left the district that's really sad that they left the district over that. So that's what I need to know, that it's not that we're addressing need first and with less focus on the technical aspect.
Eric?
So when I read the articles that were sent to us, and I reflect back on my own experience undergrad as a teacher, learning how to teach literacy, sitting in front of 25 fourth grade students responsible for moving them along, and spending a lot of close personal time with a literacy specialist. What I take away from all of this is teaching literacy is really hard. It's really complex, and the field is learning new things every day, and certainly with students who are struggling with dyslexia, but students who are struggling with other learning disabilities, just students in general who aren't struggling with a learning disability, reading is really hard, and it's complex and it's different for every individual. And so when I certainly appreciate the work that's being done around dyslexia, I'm glad that our state is starting to take a chance, and it's heartbreaking to hear the stories of the parents who have experienced that. I can't imagine those struggles, and all we can do now is to prevent that situation from happening. And again, I'm talking about whether your child is diagnosed with dyslexia or if it's another learning disability. While I'm glad that we're doing that work, I also want to see if we can think of other ways that we can instruct literacy. I mean, what other models and it could be things like even class sizes or training. I mean, I look at the 316 and 317 licenses. I look at some of that expertise. I think about myself as a first-year teacher with everything that's on your plate, and to think, one of my greatest responsibilities is to make sure these kids move along, and I'm still learning a lot. When I reflect back on my first year as a teacher, I wasn't very good. And we know that, we've got new teachers in our district and teachers who are trying to get better, but this is important. And so I don't have all the answers. I'm not projecting something, but I would be interested in, is there a different way we can do it? Can we think outside the box to get different results? Because again, certainly students who are struggling with dyslexia, but other students too, our literacy scores across the district aren't where we want them to be. And I know that we're putting time and effort and we're trying our best. And I want to continue or double down on the literacy instruction to help get our students to where they need to be. Because like we said, it's so important when you start to make that transition, learning to read and then flipping that reading to learn. And pretty soon you start falling behind. And I appreciate your analogy in a different district that you worked in about high school students who are essentially illiterate. And unfortunately, that happens not only in our district, but all across the country. And I want to do whatever we can to do what we can here locally to fix that. So.
I just wanted to actually add one other thing, Eric, because I love everything you said. I think it's absolutely, we have to be thinking about literacy and reading across the board, but there is a weird thing about dyslexia. Like, I think Amy said it, like, we can't say the D word. And I remember when I started on the board last year and I started asking people, it was weird. Like, I would start asking some literacy coaches in our district, tell me about this. And their demeanor shifted. Like, it was a thing, right? And I'm like, what is happening? So I agree with you. And we have to start naming it, right? Calling it what it is and dismantling what, the system that we think, why kids or why not or who or do they need to be diagnosable, and then again use our leverage as one of the biggest school districts in the state of Wisconsin to go back to the state to say this is not working and what we need is X, Y, and Z. And that's what I would like to see is what do we need? Let's think big, right? What do we need? What is that going to take? And it doesn't mean we're necessarily going to be able to deliver on all those, but to go to your point, if what we're doing is causing kids to leave our district, then that tells me that we need to go back to the state and say this isn't working. And if it's not working for us, it's not working for other districts either. So I just wanted to piggyback off what you said because I appreciated that.
Michelle.
As I think about this important critical conversation and having grown up in a household with a parent that was dyslexic, I can certainly relate to where that can lead. I think one of the opportunities that I look at is how do we accelerate? What do we need and how do we accelerate? And that's the piece that I keep going to as I've been reading and thinking about this in terms of, I see it as more of a universal. If it's good for children to learn phonics, some will have it, some will, so there's that piece. And my wonderment as I've sat here and listened tonight and have thought a lot about this is, are there, when we talk about the parent that spoke about Minnesota, where are the experts? That we have great teachers, but again, it was referenced several times that the university systems right now are not there with us in some places, not all, and I can't speak to that. I know we have people looking hard, thus our team has gone to the dyslexic conference and things. But my question is, John, as we've thought about this, are there experts out there, or as we think about this, would it make sense, and I'm just going to put this out for discussion, to have someone with expertise come out and look at exactly what we're doing, to say, here's a gap. Here's a place, here's a space in all of our literacy. I keep looking at that and saying, do we have the tools? Do we know? And if we, because I know that people are doing hard work really each and every day, and how do we accelerate it and really address dyslexia in our district?
So I would say that we've talked on and off about having a full literacy audit, looking at our PK-12 literacy instruction, and look at dyslexia as a component of that. I am a proponent of doing that. I think it would be helpful, not just for looking at the needs of our students with dyslexia and our needs related to phonemic awareness, but what are our literacy practices as a whole. Also thinking, we are very lucky to have some of the individuals that we have in our leadership positions. Dr. Chartier has deep, extensive knowledge and experience in literacy practices with over 30 years of experience in that area. And she's a hungry mind and a forever learner. She's going to be attending the Teachers College Reading and Writing Project. They have a conference coming up in which there is a dyslexia conference, and there's going to be a neuropsychologist from the Child Mind Institute, who's one of the premier organizations on dyslexia, and she will be going there looking at not just what are the best districts doing related to dyslexia diagnosis and treatment, but also what is it that the best districts are doing related to classroom instruction. So it's always looking for that edge of growth. We are, as we said, we're doing better than many districts, but as long as there's one student that's not being served, it's not yet enough. And we're going to be hungry for those ideas. We want to make sure that we're moving forward, and that could come from a variety of sources, whether it's a conference, whether it's an audit, whether it's also listening to the voices of the people we serve and the people that we need to do a better job of serving. So those are all opportunities for us to reach out, learn more, and move forward. I also think about resource allocation when we come into our budgeting time. Sometimes we look at things like literacy coaches and literacy interventionists and think these are people who are not directly in front of a class serving individual classroom full of kids on a regular basis, even though our literacy coaches definitely are in there co-teaching and modeling quite often. Sometimes it's looked at as an extra, but I look at it as an essential piece of making sure that universal instruction is there. So that new fourth grade teacher that Eric was reflecting on has somebody who's a more knowledgeable thinking partner who can work with that individual. I also think about that we do only have a 0.5 reading interventionist in each of our schools. And when we think of the vast number of kids that we're trying to serve, that when we're looking at fiscal resources and allocation, that might be something that the board and the district needs to consider whether that is enough.
John, one of the big barriers seems to be the actual diagnosing of dyslexia. And I know this has been explained to me in the past, but can you share why can't our school district diagnose dyslexia? What are the barriers that that make that not possible?
And Dr. Warren, you might be able to lend further detail to that, but in a nutshell, my understanding is because it's a neurological disorder, it's something that we need somebody with deeper expertise related to neurological disorders that can discern whether it's dyslexia or it might be something else related to phonemic awareness skills that the student has not yet mastered. So there's some fine lines there that we don't want to overdiagnose or underdiagnose. We want to make sure our system is as conducive as possible to serving all students, but we don't have that technical expertise to make that diagnosis. And I think about sometimes when we've worked in learning support teams, and a team might say, boy, this student seems like he has attention deficit disorder. That's not appropriate for that team to make that call because they don't have the preparation or technical expertise to even come close to being able to diagnose that. We want to make sure that it's done fairly, but we also don't want to have barriers to access to the skills that kids need. When kids struggle, we want to look at what are the deficit skills and how can we make sure that we're doing everything possible to support the student in gaining those deficit skills. Is there anything you'd add, Brenda?
Yeah, one of the things that's actually going on right now in the dyslexia field is conversation about where the diagnosis belongs. And there's a pretty big push right now to say it's really people have called it a medical diagnosis over the years because it occurs in the brain, and neuropsychologists have become experts in diagnosing it, but the treatment for it is educational. And so they're working hard. In fact, I'm going to the International Dyslexia Association conference again this year, and there's a pilot study for a dyslexia screener that can be used in 4- and 5-year-olds that they've been working on. Actually, there's more than one screener. A number of different universities have been working on that. And I think the one thing with dyslexia is that if we, as a system, in our district, if we could become very, very good at teaching reading, we will be able to address the needs of students with dyslexia, even though they don't have an official diagnosis. Because there's typical signs of students who have dyslexia. The reading instruction that's good for kids with dyslexia is good for all kids. It's the same foundational skills that all kids need. Students with dyslexia just need more of it, and more intense and more repetition, because it just takes them longer to connect those pathways to be able to learn the letter sound system. And so my hope is that this actually becomes less of a medical diagnosis, and therefore doesn't cost parents thousands of dollars to get the outside screening, that we can actually do screening and address instructional needs starting in four-year-old kindergarten, and do that kind of instruction extremely well. That will decrease the number of kids actually who kids with dyslexia can learn to read, so that'll decrease the number of students with dyslexia who don't learn how to read. But that's really coming, I think. I know one of the things, Andrew, to your point about assessment, is something that our district has put in place with the PAST test, which is a screener that can identify students that have dyslexia traits. And so that's something that has just been put into place this school year. So the 4K students will be screened with that, and the kindergarten students, and then be able to provide interventions much earlier than we have historically across the country, or actually across the world. These problems are in New Zealand and Australia and the UK also. I think it's so that's evolving, that part of it, and I think but I think it's important. I know sometimes the neuropsych tests are not honored in school districts. That's not just our school district. I hear about that all over. So figuring that part of it out, but really I think it comes down to providing the training that the university is not providing to our reading specialists and our teachers to help them understand what we know about how the brain learns to read from the science that's been generated over the last 40 to 50 years. So that's where I see us needing to go with that, and then also the D word. I mean, one of my kids has dyslexia, and I experienced all of the things that the parents were describing today. So I can relate, and my frustration led me back to school to figure this out, and then and so I've come to the point where I understand where the pushes and pulls are, where the conflicts are, where the challenges are. I know, talking about universities, the International Dyslexia Association has been working for probably 6 years now. They have a set of standards. They're working with universities to try to get them to shift how they teach, and it's an uphill climb. There's probably maybe 25 to I don't know the updated number, but certainly no more than 50 universities that have adopted these standards and are teaching their teachers how to teach students that struggle to learn how to read, is essentially what it is.
So I would say that in addressing that here internally, one of the strategies that we're using is making sure that all of our district coaches are trained in supporting and training the teachers in letter training. So that is something that is a capacity builder that we've recognized. If it's not coming from the university yet, and we hope that changes, but if it's not there yet, let's make sure that our coaches are able to support and train forward our teachers. And I'd also like to say, I know we don't we can't address parents individually who have come to open forum or public forum, but I want to make sure that we're going to be reaching out and making contact with those parents to make sure that access and support is given as clearly as possible, either through myself or through the building principal and the learning support teams, because it's critical that these issues are addressed. And looking at some things as a former middle school principal, there are ideas that I I would have as far as what I would want that to look like, whether it's a 504 plan or whether it's access through the learning support team or other mechanisms. We want to make sure that those needs are addressed.
So Andrew, you had made some sort of request, or was that just, you had said, I would like to make sure that, or there was something were you just kind of thinking out loud? Are you looking at having some sort of commitment from the district? I felt like there was some sort of request.
Well, it's nothing that I would have enough information right now to be able to articulate it specifically. I would like the district to do blank by blank date, but I do want to see the conversation ongoing, and I don't know how I would specify that within the next days or within the next week before the next meeting into a motion or a policy, but I would like to hear back from the administration how we can make sure that kids who need the services are getting the services, and how we're focusing on the need and not the technicalities.
So would you agree then that probably involves discussions with teachers?
Of course. Yeah.
So because there are parents that they can't go back to school. They have to continue working, and they have to hope for the best for their kids. And they're going to reach out to me after tonight, because this has taken a little while to get to the table, and there's been a lot of conversations around this since I've been on the board almost 2 years, and I've had a lot of conversation. I would say probably the most hot topic has been dyslexia. And these are students who are currently in the district and some that have left. So my ask is, because I know there are people that aren't going to want to look through hours of presentations, and I'm a parent with a child who's dyslexic, even though maybe there's no diagnosis, or maybe there is. What do I know will be provided to me, and where would I look for that? And it, like, succinctly, so I could actually say, here you go.
Sure. I would say make sure that they're contacting their school principal and accessing a request through the learning support team. So the learning support team would be the team that would address that and look into that. I would say that if there are individuals who need some additional direction or support in doing so, that you could refer them to me with the name of the parent in the school, and I would connect them with the executive director for that school to make sure that their needs were served within that particular school.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? We're at a point where we would invite any additional comments from the public. We would welcome that if anyone is on this particular topic. Elaine Karch is not making eye contact with me, so I'm assuming. Okay. On the dyslexia. Okay. All right. All right. Thank you. Thank you. All right, and then that concludes the work session.
All right, thanks, Katie. Thanks, John.
Thank you, John.
Next is the organizational support work session, and that'll be facilitated by Andrew Becker.
So under business and finance discussion items, we have none. Under human resources discussion items, we have none. And then we do have several discussion and public comment items. The first one being resolution regarding Native American mascots.
Do you want me to?
Do we have any opening? Is there a presentation?
No.
So then, if there's no presentation, then we go to speakers?
Well, I guess we
Or do we
have
go
our,
board comments?
we can have
Okay,
our
so-
conversation first
All right.
about it.
Okay, so we'll open that up for Board comments, and this is the discussion about whether the board wishes to co-sponsor a resolution that the Wausau School District is presenting to WSB. So Brenda, you.
Well, I was just going to ask, I suspect most of us are in favor of co-sponsoring, and I don't know if there's anybody that has anything they would do differently from that, because the plan actually is, if we decide that we would like to co-sponsor the resolution that was put forth by the Wausau School District, we would vote on Wednesday at our special board meeting as an official, to officially co-sponsor the resolution, and then that would go to the Policy and Resolutions Committee that meets in September, October? That meets in September from the Wisconsin Association of School Boards. So then the Policy and Resolutions Committee determines from all of the resolutions that were submitted by districts across the state, which ones will get a hearing at the Delegate Assembly in January. And then that, if it gets voted, if it gets the majority vote, then it becomes part of the Wisconsin School Board Association resolutions, and that guides the two lobbyists that the School Board Association has to have conversations with legislators to encourage them to put forth bills, it becomes the School Board Association's directive to our legislators as to what we want them to lobby for in the legislature. So by co-sponsoring the resolution, it essentially says to the Policy and Resolution Committee, there are multiple, and there's probably 20-ish, maybe 15 other districts across the state that have voted to co-sponsor, and they have the rest of this week to do that. And so it would be just putting some weight behind Wausau's resolution to say that we feel that this is an important resolution that we would like to see come before the Delegate Assembly.
Okay, Kristina?
So I know we usually talk and then we invite folks to come up, but I'm wondering if because of there's so many people here tonight that want to talk, I would prefer to have them talk before we talk.
Sure, that's fine. I just want to delay
I appreciate
so
that.
people understand what we're actually
doing.
going to accomplish by what we're proposing tonight.
So is that okay? I mean, I just didn't know if that was okay.
Yeah. Nope, that's good. Yeah.
Everyone okay with that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then just in order that I have forms, we'll invite first Brandon Yellowbird Stevens.
You may sit. He asked me.
And sir, if you want to push the picture of the face.
There you go.
All right. Well, thank you, Board of Education trustees, student school board members as well. It's a new thing, and I like the encouragement of the youth to be involved. Superintendent and Madam President, sorry. My name is Brandon Stevens. I'm the Vice Chairman for the United Nation. I represent 17,000 tribal members across the U.S. I believe we're in all 50 states. I also have two children. One attends King Elementary and the other attends Southwest High School. And on behalf of the 17,000 Oneida citizens I represent, I'm here to say that Oneida Nation strongly objects to the use of Native American mascots and logos. I applaud Board of Education trustees Rhonda and Kristina for bringing this forward to the Board of Education for consideration. The resolutions in oppositions of this racial mascots have been passed by all Native American nations in Wisconsin, by the Great Lakes Intertribal Council as a body, by the National Congress of American Indians, who first started a media campaign back in 1968 to study the disparaging use of Native American mascots and logos back in the late 60s. According to the Indian Mascot Logo Task Force, there are still 31 school districts that have race-based Indian logo nickname identity in Wisconsin. Mishicot is the closest to our reservation. There are 8 in the Milwaukee area where we have a high population of Oneida citizens residing. 31 school districts who have these mascots and logos have an impact to all 421 districts when they engage in interscholastic sports and competitions. The question is, why would residents of a school district want to cling on a practice that is clearly offensive hurtful, and damaging to so many. You can assert your right to free speech, but you cannot deny or disprove the fact that I find these use of racially based mascots offensive, hurtful, and damaging to our children. You cannot deny, disapprove that the use of racially based mascots is offensive, hurtful, and damaging to many gathered in this room. You cannot deny or disapprove that racially based mascots are offensive, hurtful, and damaging to many people we all represent, our neighbors, families, and children. The fact that we're here today dealing with this issue indicates that there's still a wide gap of understanding between Native American communities and non-natives. The adage that we honoring them does not. When school districts honor other people, they do most often by naming a school after an individual. Honoring is not achieved by depicting a race or people in a stereotypical image. Honoring could occur through the curriculum where a true honorable representation of Native American individuals and nations could convey to the students. By depicting Native Americans as a monolithic, homogeneous group, further distances the ability for students to know that there's 573 federally recognized tribes and over 60 state-recognized tribes. It puts us in a small box that this is how we all are. It puts us in just the history book says that we are images of the past, that our history only is backwards, and that we are not in a present-day setting. We're not capable of being doctors, teachers, school board members, and whatnot. So, professional teams employ proud mascots. Why shouldn't schools? The Washington Redskins have long been challenged by Indian nations by stop using their mascot. They are a corporation that makes millions on shirts, hats, jackets, mugs, and numerous other products. This is merchandising. As long as they can exploit the image, they will likely continue to do so. This is unlikely the responsibility of schools, however. Schools should be held to a higher standard. Their responsibilities include teaching citizenship, respect for humankind, and providing a safe environment for all students. The saga of Native America is one which truly affects the will of the nation to survive increasing change. Since the influence of European culture on Native American life, there exists a long, arduous history of cultural conflict and change. There is no other ethnic group in the United States that have experienced the devitalizing challenges put before Native American nations over the past 500 years. We have met these challenges successfully through the strength and tenacity of many of the generations of strong people who held to their traditions, language, and cultural values. The United Nations has made a concerted effort to create a standard of living in our community which provides our people with a vision and future and appreciation for the rich cultural history and traditions of the Haudenosaunee people. This is reflected throughout the Oneida community through buildings, community programs, and signs within the reservations. We encourage you to join the effort calling for lawmakers to ban Native American mascots and logos in Wisconsin's public school districts. To have, in 2020, these symbols and depictions of cultural history used in inappropriate ways without an understanding of a cultural significance and history behind them is a practice that must stop. And for our 535 students who reside in the general area, go to Green Bay Public Schools and other schools in the area, it would be very advantageous for the school districts to teach history that reflects accurate history. It would be advantageous and prideful for a history teacher to teach our students that because of the United Nations and its ancestors, George Washington was able to cross the Delaware and defeat the British. In 1777, Chief Shenandoah sent 40 warriors and Polly Cooper to the Valley Forge encampment right outside of Philadelphia and brought 600 bushels of corn, taught them how to cook it and store it over the winter. And because of that, George Washington was able to cross the Delaware. That would be so prideful of our students and having a teacher who understands that, to be able to reflect that, not just to our kids, but to all kids in Wisconsin and across the U.S. You can look in the U.S. National Archives and have see a letter from George Washington in 1775, September 28th, introducing to the Massachusetts General Court an Oneida chief, asking him that he has to bring a question back to his community. And that question was, will the Oneida people help in the Revolutionary War? And because of that, the Oneida Nation did answer that call, and we became America's first allies. And so, as a result of that, 245 years later, we continue to get an annuity from the U.S. Department of Treasury because of that service. And so these things are not told in the history books. And moving forward, they aren't taught in the civics classes, where you understand that Native Americans, Indians are in the Constitution. Article 1, Section 2, Indians not taxed. Article 1, Section 8, the Commerce Clause, that Congress shall regulate commerce between Indian tribes. Article 6, the Supremacy Clause, that all treaties shall be the supreme law of the land. And so when we don't have to educate congressmen, we can educate our kids to have a better understanding that we have an interworking relationship, not as a race, but as a political entity. Tribes are sovereign nations, and when we're treated as sovereign nations and taught in the schools that we are sovereign nations, there's a better understanding. When they become 18 years old, they become better citizens, more educated on the interworkings of a community that we are constantly trying to educate. So with that, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony. Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Brenda?
I have a question, because this is something that I know comes up in this conversation, has come up in this conversation over the years. Is there ever a time when it is respectful and appropriate to have a Native American or Indian as a mascot? Is that ever, should that ever happen?
If you just tap your button again, so you're.
Yeah.
I don't believe so.
Okay.
There's situations like the Seminole down in Florida, where they have a resolution from the Seminole Nation down in Florida. And that's a specific tribe, one of the 773 tribes that get specific permission to use that name. So like I said before, we're not a monolithic group.
Right.
You know.
So the Seminoles is a good example. I think there might be another example in Wisconsin, but I'm not sure. So is that something that's and I'm, just to be clear, I'm not a proponent of using mascots, but I want to have an answer when people say, well, what about this, what about that? And so is that considered, the use of the Seminoles as their mascot, is that considered disrespectful? Is that bad for children? What's your view on that?
I still think it's bad.
Okay.
Yeah, because the way they do it, they throw a fiery
Right.
spear in the
Yeah.
ground. You know, they got someone non-native running around on a horse. It's not what we would like to depict. We would like to be able to say, you know, if you have educated children going up to the schools, they'll make a good decision on whether this depicts our communities or not. And we would definitely believe that those children would grow up understanding that there's a lot more than that, that our communities represent.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Then next we have J.P. Leary.
Little face that looks like it's talking.
Good evening. My name is J.P. Leary. I live at 760 Chapel View Road, Apartment 15 here in Green Bay. I am here to speak in support of the Wausau resolution. I think it's a good one. I want to tell you a little bit about myself so you understand what that judgment is based on. I am Cherokee and Delaware myself, and I am currently an associate professor of First Nation Studies, of History, Humanities, and Education at UW Green Bay. I hold a doctorate in educational policy studies from UW-Madison. I spent 15 years working statewide as the American Indian Studies consultant for the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction. One of the things that I did during that time was I was one of the co-founders of an organization that was referenced earlier, the Wisconsin Indian Education Association's Indian Mascot and Logo Task Force. That was in 1997, and so I've been doing this work for a long time. And I say this to you not to say that I'm a big deal, but to be transparent about how I've reached the judgments that I have in support of Wausau School Board President Tricia Zunker's resolution that she's asking and I'm asking you to co-sponsor, please. This resolution's a good one, as you heard from Vice Chairman Stevens, and again, thank you for being here. Thank you for your testimony. This is a good resolution. One of the things that we see, and it is 12 other school districts that have already signed on, and as the deadline approaches on September 15th, other districts like yourself are taking up this resolution. And so you will not be standing alone. And I want to also help you perhaps respond to constituent questions. And people ask you to explain, why did you take the position that you did? As we heard Vice Chairman Stevens really lay out the case against mascots, logos, and nicknames, I'll constrain my remarks to the resolution itself. What we see, it's a good one. It lays out a research-based case showing that the use of Indian mascots, logos, and nicknames is harmful to Native children and is also harmful to all children in that it promotes a distorted understanding of contemporary Native realities. There's a long research documentation that's reflected in the APA resolution that is noted in the Wausau resolution. It causes psychological harm to Native students, affects areas of self-esteem, self-efficacy, and community efficacy, which as educators you know are correlates of academic achievement and attainment. These things are harmful to our children as people, harmful to our children as students, have a negative impact on their future. And we see this documented in the 2005 APA resolution and a growing body of research confirming these findings. As a district with one of the largest populations of Native students, you have a significant responsibility to our communities. It's not just about what you practice, it's about what you allow others to practice. I'm particularly thinking about interscholastic athletics. Who comes into our schools, where you send your students, our kids, where you send them to compete, what they're exposed to in other communities, despite your best efforts. You have a significant moral responsibility as educators to refrain from practices that are harmful to Native students, to encourage an end to these practices elsewhere in our state, which you can do by supporting this resolution, to ensure teaching of accurate, authentic information. We've heard Act 31 referenced several times this evening. I wrote a book on Act 31. I'd be glad to help any way that I can on that. Great, thank you. You may hear arguments in favor of local control. That's one of the things that always comes up. When I was at DPI, I would have school board members call or take me aside at a legislative hearing and say, now I'm going to say what my constituents want me to say, but take this out of my hands because I'm going to get recalled. And school board recalls interfere with your ability to do your job on dyslexia and everything else that we've heard about tonight. Those local control arguments are bogus. What they amount to is asking you to tacitly approve practices that are harmful to Native students and all students by others. Don't buy the local control argument. This is a leadership opportunity for you, again, as a district with one of the largest populations of Native students. I urge you to take it. Please support WASA's resolution calling for the end of the use to Indian mascots, logos, and nicknames. Please join those 12 other districts and the growing number that we'll see by the 15th. Thank you very much for your time and consideration.
All right. And then other speaker for this issue, Alana Dallas.
Sagoles Wagwegu, Alana Dallas, Neung Yets, Oslundige, Osga Yayak, Asan Wisk, Harold Street, Ganadage, Dwagnage. Hello to y'all. My simulated name is Alana Dallas, and I'm a resident of the Green Bay area at 1635 Harold Street. That's what I said in my language. Ilgale he taid wadalan ha yundatkas Neung Yets, Waganyanta niwagi talot, Oneote aga ni wagadu hunjoda. I shared with you my Oneida name, and I come from the people of the Standing Stone. Our homelands are in Oneida, New York. And I just want to start by saying thank you to you all for being here this evening. I'm really thankful that this resolution is carried forward to our area. Without you being here, I wouldn't have the opportunity to speak to this issue as well. The matter of Native American mascots and logos are a widespread issue. And this issue has been ongoing, as you have heard from Brandon. Brandon shared with you how many people are in our local area from our nation, over 560. And then across the nation and around the world, there's 17,000 Oneidas from our community and over 25,000 Oneidas from the other two communities collectively within Turtle Island. I'd like to continue echoing what the people before me have said on this issue. Brandon speaking to the matter that we are political identities more so than race-based identities. These mascots, they strip us of our beautiful histories. They strip us of our beautiful ways of governing ourselves and exercising our sovereignty. I was once told that if you don't own the message, that the message owns you. And so what happens sometimes is that when these people who don't come from our ways or who don't know our ways or come from the places that we do, they get told a story from these images that we don't even get to tell ourselves. And so I just wanted to focus and highlight that area as far as what I've observed in my time as being a student at the University of Green Bay, as well as being an auntie and a sister, and in some cases acting like a mother to my own family. And so in those situations, I often find young women coming to me and asking what they have to aspire to, or seeking something that represents themselves because they don't see themselves in ways beyond Pocahontas. They don't see themselves in situations behind any of these other public representations that are very common within the United States. And so I have to convince them that there's something more to that. I have to convince them that they're very capable of being contributed people within our workforce. You know, I have to convince them of that because it wasn't done here. It wasn't done in a public level for them. And so those are the discussions that are at my table. Those are the discussions that happen when I'm sitting with other women my age, even older than me, sometimes younger than me. And so I just wanted to speak to that tonight. I think I will do my best just to continue in closing with gratitude. Again, I really do appreciate your time here tonight. I thank you for bringing this matter forward, and I can't thank you enough on behalf of the other people who couldn't be here tonight. And I will close with that. Yawa.
Before we go back to board discussion, are there, were there any questions for the speaker? Okay, thank you. Any other speakers who would like to speak now that didn't fill out a form? Okay, then we'll return to board discussion. Then my understanding is the reason that if there wasn't a deadline that interfered about when we would have to register the co-sponsorship, that's why we wouldn't move it forward to the 16th, because it would miss a deadline. So we would take the step of putting it on the 11th instead,
Yes.
because of special circumstances.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think the question too is, I think if we can come up tonight with the motion that we'd like to have on the agenda, that would be helpful.
All right, Eric?
I'd just like to publicly thank the Wausau School Board for their leadership on this. Certainly, fortunately, we don't have any Native American mascots in our district, but know that, and certainly from the testimony, that this impacts our kids, even if we're not doing it. So I appreciate the opportunity to take action on something. So thank you to them, and hopefully we can figure that out tonight.
We'll go Kristina, then Rhonda.
Yeah, I just want to thank the speakers tonight, all of you, for being here. I am so grateful. Your stories of what you have experienced and what your families and your communities is powerful. Your hope for the future is humbling, and I'm very grateful that you are a part of our community. So I just want to say thank you.
Rhonda?
I also want to say thank you for coming forward to speak to this potential, inevitable agenda item where we're going to vote to co-sponsor the bill or the resolution. I'm also hoping that we can note there were 5 emails sent to us as well and to the entire school board. And I wanted to make sure that they were noticed into the record that there were 5 other, and it was very similar to what was discussed tonight, was sent to us, and I'm grateful for those emails and that feedback as well. I'm super excited that our district is considering this, and very, very hopeful that we can get on board. Thank you.
Okay, I guess I would say I have a suggestion for a pretty simple, straightforward motion for the 11th, which would be that the Green Bay School District co-sponsors the Wausau resolution regarding Native American mascots. Eric? What are you saying? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it wasn't on the resolution. This is probably just more of a newbie question, but are we prohibited from voting on this tonight, or we are? Okay. Thought it would have, I don't know if anyone's going to come back on Wednesday for us to vote on this one thing, but I think it would have been nice for us to, you're certainly welcome to come on Wednesday, but I wish we could vote on it tonight while everybody was here. I think that'd be powerful, but that's.
We generally, we generally don't like to present and vote on the same night because it doesn't provide for other people to have input into the vote that we're taking. And in this particular case, we usually wait 2 weeks. That's why Andrew asked about putting it on our board meeting. But since there's a deadline from the Wisconsin Association of School Boards, we only have a 2-day window. But that's why we're not voting tonight.
Good.
Go ahead.
The Policy and Resolutions Committee is the State School Board Association, and so they have representation from many school districts across the state on that committee. And that committee looks at all of the resolutions that have been put forward by the school boards. If you stay, you'll hear we're looking at submitting 3 of our own to the committee. And then that committee meets in September, and they decide what resolutions get heard at the delegate assembly. The delegate assembly is one representative from every single school district in our state. So there's about 425 people in the delegate assembly. And then there's conversation, there's back and forth, people are able to give testimony and things like that, and then they vote. If the resolution were not to make it to the delegate assembly in January, the Wausau School District would have the right to ask to have it put on the delegate assembly that day. And then I think it's a 2/3 vote is required on that. So that's usually it's the third Wednesday in the coldest day in January. Usually it's the coldest day in January. And that's down in Milwaukee. And you are able to come observe the delegate assembly. They have seating in the back of the room that if you're interested in hearing the conversation from the school board.
And at that point, every district in the state has one vote at that assembly. And I guess if I were going to recommend any additional proactive campaigning, you might want to address it to the resolutions committee at this point, because they will they're the next hurdle. They would make the decision whether or not to advance it. And that would be the Wisconsin Association of School Boards.
Yeah, and you could also
Not to tell you what to do, but
write letters to all the school boards and, send them to all the school boards in the state. 12?
12.
Yeah, we would be 13, but I think there's a few more that are considering it this week. We have to vote on it by Sunday is the deadline. It has to be submitted by Sunday.
Just to be clear, there's not, well, I am supporting the resolution. This is a new development, the co-sponsorship. There isn't a listed procedure in Wisconsin Association of School Boards to list the co-sponsors like there is in the House or Senate to list the co-sponsors. So this is a step that I'm happy to join the Wausau School Board, but it's outside the box and it's new. So it's not, there won't be, at the convention, there won't be a list of the co-sponsors because there's not a formal structure for that, although I'm certainly hoping that the committee would take note of the fact that this has obviously momentum behind it since school districts are taking upon themselves to co-sponsor it. Yes.
Actually, so just for disclosure here, I just was recently appointed to the Policy and Resolution Committee, so I will be attending that meetings, I should say, in Madison on September 27th and 28th, where all the resolutions will be addressed, including this one. But today I did speak to someone from the WASB who told me that by doing a resolution, we will be linked officially to this resolution, and it will become part of the documentation around it, and that documentation will follow it through the process. That was what I was assured of. So that makes this resolution important, and I'm really glad we're doing it. So.
I didn't know that could happen without a bylaw or something. So
I didn't know that till today either. So.
All right, Rhonda.
Is there a name of the I'm not aware. Is there a specific name of the resolution that we want to include in the motion?
Yeah.
Right? An official name?
Resolution recommending, well, you have this, right? Yeah, just copy the title.
Just for his motion? Okay. I didn't hear him say it.
Yeah, that sounds good.
It doesn't really exist until Wednesday anyways, but yes, I would say it would be good to read out the name of their motion when we make the motion. Yeah. Okay, anything else? All right, thank you.
Thank you
So
very
that will
much.
move forward to Wednesday then, rather than to next week. And then next item we have is other proposed WSB resolutions.
That's you.
Barry, just bear with me a moment here while I pull those up.
Thank you again. Thank you.
Thank you.
So these ones that we're looking at, these are resolutions that the WSB themselves have suggested, or? These are ours, okay.
So Michelle and I met and with Lori Blakesley, and we talked about this, like what do we do as a district, some of our priorities, and none of these are going to surprise anybody at the table here. These are these are aligned with the Blue Ribbon Commission, and we've talked about them many times, and it just made sense to, you know, as our to offer something from our district that we felt were priorities to the WASB for discussion and hopefully passage. Does anyone have any questions?
Michelle?
Thank you, Laura. You know, as we looked at these are things that we look at our learners, and we still know that even though the Blue Ribbon Commission was not able to move these forward, if you look at these, we put the rationale behind it. Obviously, the social emotional learning for all students across the state is a key priority in terms of resource. The English learner piece continues to be a challenging effort for whatever reason. So, and part of it is because not all students were receiving the resource. So what this was intended to do was provide a weighted categorical or a weighted revenue for all students, regardless if they hit that 20 cell size or 40 cell size, because in smaller districts, for example, they have been looking for additional resource to support their English learners as well. So that's why you'll see a weighted average, and you'll see the language talking about all EL students, not just those that meet a certain, you know, number in a school district, recognizing the fact that each student is most deserving. So, and if you look down, I put a note down below that according to January report of the Education Commission of States, 25 states already are using a weighted factor to fund bilingual, bicultural pupils. And of those, the average is equal to 1.2 FTE. So putting that out there as well.
Okay, then would we adopt these as resolutions also on Wednesday? So we would add these 3 items to the Wednesday agenda, which would be our proposed resolutions on social emotional learning, categorical aids, ELL service, and transportation for high poverty districts. Brenda?
Is the transportation for high poverty districts, I don't remember, was that in Blue Ribbon? That's something of our making. Yes, that's what I thought.
It's ours.
Yeah, and I think that one's interesting because there's been lots of talk and lots of categorical aid over the, well, not enough, I'm sure the districts would say, but categorical aid for rural districts and transportation there. I think this one is really good because it outlines that even though our kids are closer to our school district than they are in rural communities, we still have transportation challenges that relate to different things than just distance from school.
All right, anything else on these? Okay, thank you very much. We will forward those, and so those will be added as recommended motions for Wednesday. Again, normally it would be the next week, but due to having to get them in before the cutoff date. All right. Anything else? All right. Our next, any public comments? Okay. Board meeting postings. We have board discussion, and then I have one public comment registered for it. But I think we do board discussion. Are there board, Eric?
Just was wondering maybe if we would do similar to the other one, if we would have the person speak first before on this topic, unless somebody. No.
I'm fine with it. Should we have the speaker go first? That's fine. I'm fine with it. All right. Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
We'll call Mike Hallahan to the table. Well, thank you.
So did I have to push something here?
Yep, it's the button with the little speaker.
And then hold it?
No, just tap it.
So we're good?
No, not yet.
One that looks like a person talking.
Oh, there we go. All right, thank you. Appreciate it. So I have to say that I am so glad that I was the last person from the public to get onto the agenda here, because it really kind of gave me more to what I wanted to talk to you about. So today we had a pretty big crowd here because of what was on the agenda, but 9 times out of 10, there's no media here except for what we're doing with the Press Times. And I've been with in this business for 30 years with the same company, the Wood family, that used to own the Green Bay News Chronicle. And I wish we would have gotten back into Green Bay a number of years ago, because what happened is when we sold the Green Bay News Chronicle to the Press Gazette, they shut it down within a year. And I'm glad we got out of the daily newspaper business, because the internet changed so much of that. But what I didn't foresee was how these companies like Gannett, who own the Green Bay Press Gazette, were going to get away from covering local news and local high school sports. And the people that work for the Green Bay Press Gazette are good people that live here in our community and that are part of it. But unfortunately, they're working for a company that has other ideas of what newspapers should be, more about trying to make money, doing whatever they can in a tough business. But they now are being bought out by a hedge fund that's based out of Tokyo, Japan. And the thing that I want to talk to you about is obviously getting the legals for our paper. Because anything that, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but anytime any money is spent with the Green Bay Press Gazette, it does not stay in this community. It gets shipped back to their corporate headquarters in Arlington, Virginia, and it'll soon be shipped back to Tokyo, Japan, where we're locally owned here in Green Bay and everything stays within the community. But real quick history of why what we're doing is what we're doing is a few years ago, we got back in the newspaper business. We were kind of like the phoenix rising from the ashes when we sold the News Chronicle. We went into hiding a little bit, but then we started buying newspapers up from the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel in communities like Wapaka, Clintonville, New London, Stevens Point, where these communities didn't have TV stations that were covering what's going on with the local school board, with the city council. And people really still thrived to these papers. But then I was looking at the Green Bay area and noticing how the Green Bay Press Gazette was getting away from covering a lot of the local stuff. And I talked to Patrick Wood, Frank Wood's son, that now runs our company, and I said, we need to get back into Green Bay. We should reach out to Michael Obinger and see if he'd be interested in selling the Ashwaubenon Press. Well, we didn't realize Mike was sick at the time, and he passed away. And then, long story short, his wife took it over. She's a school teacher by trade. She reached out to us, and within a week after talking to her, we bought the paper. And at that time, it was covering the villages of Ashwaubenon, Howard, Swamico, and Hobart. Well, when we bought it, they didn't have a website, so we built a website, et cetera. But then we added staff on, Ben Rogers, our editor, and some more people. And we went into De Pere. And the mayor, Mike Walsh, we met with, was just overwhelmed that we were going to start covering city council meetings, because nobody was at their city council meetings unless it was a discussion about Legion Pool or something to that aspect. And so within 2 months, we had over 600 new subscribers that signed up for the paper. And then we started not only covering high school sports in Bayport, in Ashwaubenon, but De Pere and West De Pere, and that's where the floodgates opened, because all of a sudden now our reporters were getting requests from, why aren't you covering Green Bay Southwest or Green Bay Preble, or why aren't you writing about what's going on in the village board meetings of Bellevue or out? So we felt obligated, but also wanting to, quite frankly, get back into Green Bay. So we started covering everything in the Green Bay. And 9 times out of 10, Heather, to the best of my knowledge, is the only one covering the Green Bay school board meetings. And that's why I was so glad that I was here till the end, because there's so many meetings where we're the only people, media here covering, but things that you guys are talking about, the people of Green Bay need to know about. And if they don't know about it, that's really scary. And that goes along with all the village board meetings and the high school sports. Again, the Press Gazette has one guy named Scott Vency, nice guy, pulled 9 ways to Sunday, so he can't really get into covering high school sports anymore. He does one football game, but other than that, he doesn't cover any boys soccer, girls volleyball, or anything like that. And these kids need to have coverage. It's good for their self-esteem to see themselves in the paper, whether it's in our digital online or in our paper once a week. And so we have 4 individuals that are dedicated to covering high school sports in the Green Bay area. And I can't tell you how much people come to us and say, thank you for doing that. I guess the biggest thing is we've been the official paper of the villages, or the school districts of Howard, Swamico, and Ashwaubenon for years. We have a paper in Wapaka, Clintonville, New London, where we're the official paper of the school districts. It can be done with a paper that gets printed once a week. And I can put you in touch with any of these people at these areas if you want to go through how do they go about it. But the big thing is we're locally owned, we're community focused. You guys are the school, district of Green Bay. We're the ones that want to talk about it, and the hopes are that we can become, get the legals from your end, because I'll tell you what, that it will help us complete the mission that we're doing. If you look at some of these markets in the United States, it's pretty scary. I think it's 220 counties in the United States that have no newspapers discussing what's going on in the area. And who knows, growing up in Green Bay, who would have ever thunk H.C. Prangies would have went away and things like that? You just never know, and you never know what's going to happen with Gannett now being owned by a hedge fund out of Japan. Where is that going to go? And we just are so excited about covering hyper local news in the Green Bay area, whether it's sports, school boards, or village board meetings, and we would love your support. So, any questions or?
Questions? Rhonda?
I don't have a question. I just want to say I'm so grateful that you're here on a regular basis consistently. So thank you.
Heather is our loyal viewer.
Heather's awesome. She really is awesome.
Well, and Noah. Betty, you're here a lot. Noah.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to, just in the interest of maybe saving some time, or maybe people don't agree with where I'm going with this, but I'm just going to toss this out there first. So we have, due to some of the size and complexity of a large school district, we have a higher frequency of meetings that come up on shorter notice. We have more expulsions. Fortunately, many expulsions end in a reentry hearing. Sometimes those come together on short notice. So in looking at this, what I would suggest be drafted for next week would be a motion where we would put minutes in the press times, and meeting notices would continue in the Press Gazette, because I think you need, it may work in other places. I don't think it would work here because of the short notice meetings, and I don't think it's good for the public to have most of the regularly scheduled meeting notices be in one place, but sometimes it would have to be in the daily paper. But if all minutes were in the press times, I think we would be supporting a paper that covers what's going on here. It's the results of the meetings. That would be my suggested motion for next week.
I have one addition.
Yeah.
I have one additional thought. We are required to do annual notices. So, example, the
school options notice, the child find notices, those are one time a year. Those could be published in the Press Times as well. It's the meeting notices where we're on a short duration that we would need to continue to use the Press Gazette, a daily newspaper.
I'd be open to that too. So that would be my suggested motion for next week.
So you're adding the annual notices?
Sure,
to
annual
your
notices and
meeting
minutes.
minutes, yeah.
Anyone have any other, Rhonda?
And can you just state on the record, and just so everyone understands, including myself, that the requirements for meeting postings as far as where they have to be?
They have to be in print, right, Melissa? Yeah, they can't be online. Yeah, if it's in the newspaper.
And that's a open meetings, right? Okay.
There probably are ways that a district who wanted to could use a loophole and have nothing in print, although that's not a place I want to go.
Well, you can post in 3 places.
Melissa, do you want to come back
Yeah,
up?
why don't you come back?
Yeah.
I want to be clear that although technically there is a way we could avoid ever publishing in a newspaper, that's not a place I would want to go. But we could just tack up a notice every time at 3 places around town and technically meet the letter of the law.
Correct.
In my individual opinion as an independent elected official, that would be crummy, so I still think we should be in papers. And where we can, let's support put in the Press Times. It's also more cost effective because there's a formula. It's not a negotiation. It's set by the state in a really arcane formula. And that formula causes us to pay a lot more per line for the Press Gazette, even though the Press Gazette circulation covers many communities far outside of Green Bay. So, okay, so that would be the motion for next week.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, anything else? Okay, seat assignments at board table. That was a requested discussion item. I think maybe it was Kristina's first, or it came out of a discussion in one of the facilitated meetings. Yeah, Rhonda?
Yeah, I brought that up actually because I had talked about, we had talked about this, I think, at the retreat. We had mentioned it, about the energy of the room, how it changes based on where you're sitting sometimes, and just in general, just to see what that would be like. So just a suggestion to maybe alter that.
And I guess, go ahead. Is she next? Yeah.
Yes, yeah, you're next.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Aaron.
The only thing I was going to add too is I think it would be nice as we think about culture and climate of us working together on the board is that you end up talking more to the people who are sitting next to you because you just are sitting next to them. So it might be nice to sort of break it up, not every week or every other week, but maybe periodically into shifts so that we can just, have some different relationships with different board members as you're speaking with them. Laura, are you rolling your eyes at me?
No, I'm like, I never want to talk to Eric, so.
So anyways, I do think it would be nice to change it up every once in a while. I would like to sit on the other side or in the middle and see what the view looks like from over
So we've thought about how to do this, so it's not all on Sandy to make the decision. And the other question that's come up is whether I, as president, need to sit in the same spot. Is that helpful? But anyway, I'm thinking even we could just, well, no, that wouldn't work. Yeah, it has to be random, but with so few people, the random may not feel so random. So I don't know if you're good with Sandy just scrambling the cards and throwing them on the table, and then There you go, your new job.
You had an idea I thought that was kind of cool. Just put everyone's name things out somewhere, and as they come in, they grab it and they sit down.
Yeah, I think otherwise, if it's, I think it probably, I think if we do it, it should be random. I think it probably makes sense for the president and the superintendent to be in the middle, although I think there might be some merit, and that doesn't have to be decided at the same time as this, but possibly it would make sense, since it's hard to keep track of who's actually chairing, maybe the chair should go into the middle when they're chairing that part of the meeting, although that could be a separate discussion. I'm not super attached to it, but.
Well, I think the president's, I believe, microphone is different than the rest of ours, so you'd have to know where that person is sitting. But then from there, if we do some random order, and maybe we keep it the same for a semester, so we say, hey, first semester, this is how we're gonna sit, and in January, start of the second semester, we're gonna redraw and we'll sit in different spots until the end of the year, and yeah.
I think any more than twice a year could get a little chaotic, but this would allow some, so. So, what would happen next then? Since there's no policy about where board members are seated, if there's consensus that we want to have just a random, have Luke just randomly put out placards at the next one?
Are you up to it, Luke?
So next week, just take all of our name tags and flip them over like this, shuffle them up, and then just put them down like this. And then when you get back, just flip them over. And that's where we'll sit.
Does that include
That's
mine?
on you now.
Can I end up like in the middle?
My concern with doing it is he's not here for the meeting.
Oh, yeah, you're not here at 5.
Yeah, I'll be here next week.
I mean, I need to have them set up before.
Before the special board meeting, right?
Yeah. I mean,
Okay. Well, what if we do it right at the
Sandy
end?
can
What if we do
shuffle.
it right after we adjourn tonight?
Just do it tonight. That's fine.
Okay.
All right.
I'm not ready.
Are you actually not ready?
No, I was just teasing, sorry.
Okay, good. All right.
Who does that?
Yeah, the kids,
Yeah.
Are you
the students.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
3 and 3.
Sandy stays.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. All right,
And if it's exactly the same,
Blame it on me. All right.
it's exactly the same.
Luke,
all right.
Okay. All right.
we missed one though. Did we?
Oh, I'm sorry. I skipped media and public space at board meetings.
You were so excited to get to seat assignments.
Yep. And Lori's gonna come up. Mr. Becker.
Okay. So Lori, you have some background information on this?
Good evening. So as requested, I had provided you a document to kind of give you an idea of what the board from currently is set up and with some suggested places where we would consider as sort of media, where the media would be able to have access to. Again, I've talked to a couple of reporters, I've explained what our intent here is, which is, as I've explained to them, that now, as the red dotted area in the diagram shows, that is now a recorded area. And so wanting to think about what are the people who watch the video seeing when they're watching the video, but also more importantly, and both reporters agreed with me, is that sometimes you come into a room, you don't know where you're supposed to be. And we have never really given anybody, that understanding of, sort of what's the expectation in the room, where are they allowed to go, if can they move around? Can they get this, I've often seen people like nervous to, can I come take a picture, right? Because we don't provide any guidelines. And so this is really the idea behind this, is to really make sure as we have new reporters come, they kind of walk in, they get here late, they've got that deer in the headline look, like, I don't know where I'm supposed to go. And so really being able to communicate with them. one area that we've established that makes sense, that's close to the new malt box, that was very positively received, that we were gonna be able to provide them really high quality sound for their video. And then on the diagram, but my suggestion, again, this is completely up to the board. My suggestion is that the space sort of behind Eric there would be a short-term space, only from the standpoint of, like, obviously tonight we had one TV station here. It wasn't problematic at all, but sometimes we may have 4 TV stations here. It's a rather tight space to have everybody at one time. We want to make sure that they do have access to take video or pictures of the people who are speaking. So by having that as a place where they can come get what they need and then they would move back to the other spot, allows to make sure that everybody has access. So those were just my thoughts as I tried to put something together that I thought would make sense.
Michelle?
Yeah, I think that what's really important is that we put together the guiding change and that information that was for you. And so again, we want the board to have, it's your meeting, and we just want to be sure that our media gets what they need, and at the same time our community receives the information that they're seeking as well. So just wanted to put that out there as well.
Eric?
So when it says short-term media access, that's kind of where they would set up, but if they needed to get someplace else to get a different shot, they'd be able to move around the room, or would that kind of be where they would have to stay?
So the thought was to set them up back over in this corner where the malt box is. Because when I had talked to one of the reporters, he said what's really important is for him to be able to sit next to his camera person so that they can discuss, what shots does he want next, things like that. And so the idea then is, because that is a smaller space, would sort of be where you short-term walk up here, get the footage of the people who are speaking, and then they would go back to that space so that everybody would have an opportunity to be able to get that. Because if you try to put 4 cameras back there, it could be pretty tight, so.
Other board question, Rhonda?
I've had some feedback on the Wi-Fi service in the room. Is there anything we could do to improve that?
So my understanding, and we'd have to check it because this is not my expertise, but my understanding is that is part of our E-rate, and that all of our Wi-Fi that we provide in the boardroom is part of the same thing we provide in our schools. And so it does have limitations, just like our schools do, as to what people can access over the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, Ron?
Are those limitations just organic, or are they constructed?
I don't have any idea. I'd have to check in with our technology department.
It's filtered, right? Yeah, the
Right.
E-rate
Yeah,
requires us to
that was my
filter,
understanding, because
yeah.
I think when we talked to Diane once before, she had mentioned that it was due to E-rate, and that the filters that we had on had to be, consistently
District-wide.
applied, and so that's why the boardroom had those limitations. But, again, I'd have to have further conversation with IT, because I have a very high-level, limited understanding of it, so.
Yeah, Rhonda? Yeah.
And I would appreciate just to see what's possible, if there's anything at all.
Are you
that's
hearing
possible.
complaints about quality and speed, or access to certain websites?
Just Wi-Fi service in general. And it's just not.
But I mean,
doing it.
because we can help people access the Wi-Fi, but I'm just curious if they're frustrated that they can't. For instance, I know we can't get to Facebook on our Wi-Fi. Are they frustrated by that, or are they frustrated by?
I would say so.
Okay. And that we can't change. No.
Well, I'd like to maybe talk to IT about speed. Speed isn't an issue. I mean, there's I'm getting 100 megs download right now, which is outstanding. So, and I think it's symmetrical, so that's amazing. So, I guess could we? That's probably somewhat separate from the idea of where the media table will be, but it is an important question, and I think public public spaces, there are ways that there can be, guest access and things, so,
Yeah, we have guest access. Is it?
There is guest access. I think what the issue is that the access has to be filtered for E-rate purposes, and it's the same filter applies for students as applies for adults. So websites that are not available for students are not available for adults, and we can't change that for purposes of E-rate.
Can you explain to me what you mean by E-rate? Like, I really don't know what that is.
Sure. E-rate is a federal program that we apply for, and I don't know how often we have to apply for it. I want to say every 10 years, but that could be wrong. And is that wrong, Michelle? Yeah. Okay. Okay, thank you. And when we apply for the E-rate, we have to certify a number of things. One of the things we have to certify is that we are not allowing students access to inappropriate content through the internet. And we have to block certain things that are available on the internet for students. And so things like YouTube are blocked for students. Things like, give me another example.
Netflix, Instagram, Facebook, Cool Math Game. Okay, we got it.
Hit your button.
But by the way, Cool Math Games should be addressed because I know of teachers who use that as a legitimate educational tool, and I think overall, I mean, we've gotten quite a bit off topic here because this is about a media table, but I do think restrictive, we also had an internet policy by prior staff implemented that caused a swear word filter that caused board members to not get emails from the public complaining about important issues, and that was an embarrassment to the board by prior staff that did that. So, but we're pretty far off the media table here, but the points are well taken. Is there anything else about the designated media area? Questions, comments? We'll try it, and if people from the media, large or small media, don't like it, then they talk to us, and we probably don't need formal action on this one either, since there isn't a policy about it. Okay, anything else? Thank you. Okay, so, all right. And so I jumped ahead to E, and then scheduling board work group meetings.
So this has become a challenge to try to figure out how to schedule work group meetings, which is something that I know probably all of us, many of us are wanting to have. And what I mean by work group meetings is the teaching and learning, organizational support, monitoring reports, and the student services work group. And the idea of these is to meet ahead of time to go over what's coming up at meetings, what people would like to see, just to have conversation, to be able to ask some questions, to flesh out the presentation a little bit more, things like that. So it's originally there was an idea that we could have these meetings at 3:45. I suspect most that's difficult for a lot of us because of jobs. And the problem is that they need to be posted, so they need to be consistent. And so I'm thinking that, and they also need to be at times when staff is available too. So there's got to be some coordination. I'm thinking if people after this meeting, maybe, or this, it's mostly, well, no, it's John and Vicky, and then also Finance and Terry. Finance is usually pretty flexible with meeting times. Is that a fair statement, or do they have set?
I think we have to talk about that.
So I guess I'm actually just looking for ideas of how to get this figured out. One idea I had was just to pair up with the person who you're on the work group with, talk to the staff person and see what would work in your schedule. And then once that meeting is set, it's set. And so if you can't make it, then one of you comes and the other one has to catch up, because if they're posted, we can't be changing the times all the time or Sandy will go crazy.
I think part of the idea way back when we went to co-chairs of work groups, work sessions, was that probably you'd be able to get at least one of the two. So hopefully that would work out. I think I think that idea makes sense, to have the two co-chairs ask and see if we can work it out. I don't. I guess I'm open to trying it. I don't know if it'll be able to be found or not,
Yeah,
but I think if we can, it's a good idea probably.
Well, and I think too, we used to would meet by phone, so if you're not in the room, you can still call in and attend the meeting by phone. And I think too, that there has been, some of you have asked if you can be on another committee, and I think that that's fine, especially since they're posted. So if you're a third coming into a committee, you'll have to hook up and just figure out if you can figure something out. So it seems like a tough assignment, but that's kind of what I'm thinking is the only way to really figure this out.
Can you remind us again of what are the committees and who is on them?
Teaching and learning is Katie and Eric, and I think, did you haven't, yeah, and you're on organizational support, but I know you had asked about possibly coming into another group.
I did, but I can stay.
Okay, and I think if you have an interest in some of the other groups and you're the third, then it's posted, and if you can come, you come, and if you can't, you can't. So it's Andrew and Kristina are organizational support. Rhonda and Laura are monitoring reports. And then I have, yeah, so anyway, that's your assignment after our meeting.
How about culture and climate?
Oh, yeah. And then the student services was Katie and Laura. And then Ed used to be on it, and I don't know that we've assigned a third. It might have been what you wanted to be, yeah.
I'd actually like to do that one. I don't know if I'd be able to come to everyone, but yeah.
Okay.
Culture and okay, because I used to be on culture and climate.
Yeah, that's why I said Katie and Laura.
You said
and
student
Kristina.
services.
Well, that's what it's called.
Oh.
They're calling it something different.
All right.
Sorry, I didn't.
To connect with each other.
And with the staff person that needs to be at that meeting.
One time per month?
Yes.
Yeah.
1 hour?
I mean, it shouldn't be more. It shouldn't be more than an hour. It might be shorter.
I know Vicky runs a tight ship. That's all I know.
They don't last an hour with Vicky. And then the idea is then to have that meeting at least, we used to have them the week before your agenda is going, or your committee is going on the agenda. So for teaching and learning, organizational support, you would meet the week before our work session. Monitoring reports would meet before the regular board meeting. Student services can be a little more flexible because it doesn't show up in our agenda every time.
And there's by policy, the monitoring reports, the teaching and learning, and the organizational support are the three formalized committees in policy. So
right.
If we were to make culture and climate a fourth one, that would be a policy change, although it can still keep doing exactly what it's doing. But if we were to make it a fourth standing one, then it would have a policy change and probably have a spot on the agenda.
Yeah.
Which I'm not saying good or bad, I'm just saying that one is different than the others as it stands right now.
Yeah. And I think we decided at this point that it's not something that needs to go on a regular agenda, and the committee can decide if there's things that need to come forward.
Okay, so individual co-chairs will attempt to work that out. Anything else on that one? All right. We have no items under human resource discussion item and public comment. Are there any comments related to setting future agendas? Rhonda?
I've been frequently asked about when the dress code changes are coming forward.
They're coming.
So there's kind of a process, which I'm sure you guys all know about, to get things to the board. So we've been meeting with all the principals, and we have another meeting on Wednesday to discuss the dress code changes with Dr. Wiegand and Dr. Langenfeld, as well as I think Mrs. Teal Collar. But then you have to take it to your parent committee.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't know when that is. Because I'm certain the board is anxious to get going. Then besides
Can
the
you turn
parent,
your microphone on?
besides the parent committee, then Luke, where are you going after that? Then is it taking it to the board then?
To my understanding, yes.
Yeah.
I guess I'd like to see it in the October cycle. Otherwise, we've lost a lot of year. And I think if the standard parent committee is not available for whatever reason, then I think the superintendent could just form a different group, representative group of parents.
Get some feedback.
Okay, so that'll be in the October cycle.
Yeah, I think that was the original.
And Rhonda?
So what specifically is being brought forward and who's crafting it?
That's what we're discussing with the principals about at the middle schools and high schools, to see their opinions on the whole situation. The main things right now are that we're getting their opinions on: hats, hoods, coats, and then gender bias towards females in the middle school level mainly, as well as being able to take off your shirt during after-school activities.
Okay, anything else? I have one. Do we want to just to make it more official than a informal email poll? I know that for the last facilitated meeting on the 24th, Drew was interested in board members' opinions. Do we want to just decide, since that is kind of saying an agenda topic, just decide which one we want, either now or at this same point in the next meeting? Or is that already done? Yeah, I didn't either, and I guess it could be seen as like a private poll on an agenda item. I'm not super worried about it, but if we wanted to not at all be worried about it, we could just
Legally,
do that this week or next week.
Legally, we don't have to be worried about it.
Because it's just setting
It's just setting an
a
agenda.
topic.
Yeah, a
But-
topic. And we're just sending our opinions to a person that's not on our board. And so
Okay.
we're not creating any kind of discussion around the topics. We're just
It's
putting it
because it's a
forward.
one way.
It's
I
a
mean, would we
one-way.
still be, and we would still be approving the agenda for that. We would still be posting an agenda for that
Correct.
meeting.
And then we would be discussing whatever it is that,
Okay.
that we decided,
If
so.
no one else is worried about, I'm not either. Okay. All right. And then their closed session was completed already, so then we would turn it back over to the chair for the motion.
All right, entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.
You have been watching the Green Bay Area Public School District's Board of Education meeting. Please visit the school district's website, www.gbaps.org, to view the program again. If you cannot fully access the information on this video, please let us know the accessibility issue you are having by calling 920-448-2025 or by email at communications@gbaps.org. We will try to provide the information to you in an alternative format and/or make the necessary improvements to make the information accessible.